of the sports festival. Third POV. Fireworks flew and exploded in the bright blue sky over UA High School, the sounds of murmuring, cheering, and conversation joining the booming of the fireworks. UA High's gates were overflowing with people, from regular civilians to news reporters to pro heroes and numerous species of Pokemon accompanying both kinds. A news reporter groaned, shoulders slumped in annoyance and exhaustion at the overflowing crowd right at the gates of UA. This security line is huge. She groaned, turning to her cameraman. What's the deal? Well, a bunch of villains did just break in. Of course the school's being strict this year. Her cameraman replied, his tone coming off like it was obvious. Looking up towards the high blue buildings of the main campus, he continued with, there are some people who think they shouldn't be holding the festival at all, so soon after what happened. Perfect. The news reporter exclaimed, grinning wide. Nothing brings ratings up like a bit of controversy. And everyone will tune in to watch Class 1A. As the news reporter laughed maniacally, drawing odd glances and her cameraman to groan in embarrassment, a woman looked at them with confusion. Huh. She's excited. The woman said, her statement more question. Heel. The woman's helioptile agreed, peeking from behind her shoulder. The woman was of average height, wearing a fashionable dress shirt that was black around the shoulders, arms, and down to half of her modest chest, while the rest of the shirt down to her waist was cherry red. A white collar popped out around her neck, the same white fabric and design on the ends of her sleeves by her elbows. She wore gray pants, brown boots, and a large brown belt around her waist, a black bag attached to the back. The woman had dark green eyes and brown hair, one particularly long, brown hair extended and curled forwards by her brow. She held a camera in hand and helioptile hung onto her shoulders. I can't say I blame her. The woman shrugged and talked to her Pokemon. Like her, I'm excited to see what cool quirks and Pokemon the first years got. Suddenly, her cell phone started to ring. The woman quickly answered the phone. Bonjour. She replied. Hello, Alexa. It's been a while. A beautiful, lustrous voice sounded through the other end. OMG, Siwit. How are you? It's been ages since we've talked, girl. The now named Alexa talked, her dark green eyes sparkling in joy at hearing her old friend. Yeah, sorry about that, Siwyan replied. Would have called sooner, but you know how busy this line of work is. Yeah, Japan's newest Pokemon champion and the world's youngest champion ever. Alexa replied with an eye roll. Well, not anymore. Cynthia replied, the woman herself sitting on a luxurious red leather chair in her penthouse, watching the news and beginnings for the sports festival, her form obscured by the large chair. Haven't you heard? Young Iris just became Egypt's Pokemon champion at the young age of 14. The little prodigy is already being dubbed the Dragon Princess. Oh yeah, I remember. Alexa nodded her head before chuckling. Kind of forgot about that. Not surprising. Cynthia replied, her lustrous pale hand raising a glass of water to her lips to sip, her golden hair curling downwards. It just happened a day or two before the USJ. Iris wasn't happy that the spotlight was stolen from her so soon. Wonder how our Dragon King, Lance, feels about the Dragon Princess? Alexa asked. Cynthia chuckled. The two share a rather competitive rivalry, along with a begrudging uncle-niece-like relationship. Cynthia replied, Ooh, now that's a scoop. Alexa hissed, excited for the news to write about. But anyways, what are you calling about, CYN? Are you at the sports festival? Cynthia asked, just about to get in. Alexa answered, the line is crazy long and security's tighter than constricting Ekans. Not that I'd blame them for being extra cautious with the whole villains busting into the USJ thing. Agreed. Cynthia took another sip of her water. Alexa, could you perhaps give some early access to some of your footage of the event when the festival's over?
Why?
Isn't watching it on the TV good enough? You and your sister of all people are the best at finding and capturing that which is truly interesting than a regular cameraman. Cynthia replied with a amused chuckle. Oh, you truly get me, see? Alexa exclaimed, wiping away a comedic tear. All right, I'll give you what I got first thing after the festival, but you got to get me an interview. It's a deal. Cynthia smiled. Anything you looking for specifically? Alexa asked. Just anything out of the ordinary, and I mean beyond the already out-of-the-ordinary things our world holds. Cynthia said, her gray eyes shining. You know me, Alexa, I'm always interested in solving a few mysteries. On the other side of the UA gate, a line of concession stands are set up along the pathway towards the building with tons of people crowding around for different types of snacks. The lines of stands spread out from left to right, arrows pointing to the right towards where the second and third year students will participate, and left for the first years, the first year line being noticeably packed. I'm always excited to see the third years since it is their last year to show their stuff. One man spoke amongst the crowd in a sea of conversations and chatter. Nah, this time is all about those powerful first years. Another man replied, the ones that survived that villain attack. I can't wait. Hey, did you know that Endeavor's son is one of first-year students? A woman among them spoke up. No way, seriously? The first man replied in shock. Man, the stands for the first years are going to be packed. I'll take one order to go, please. A very feminine voice ordered. Whoa. Is it really you, Mount Lady? The concession worker exclaimed in excitement, a blush on his face. Mount Lady, Kamui Woods, and Death Arms stood before the stand in their costumes, with the added exception of a tag hanging around them. Kamui's Septile and Death Arms' Macamp stood beside them, while Mount Lady's Gorgias stood by Lady's side. And hold the salt, will you? Mount Lady asked sweetly. Of course. The man quickly went to work. That's going to be $10. Mount Lady froze for a moment before deciding to put on the charm. Oh no. She groaned sweetly, noticeably swaying her wide hips and fiddling with one of her longer, curled hair strands, her arm purposefully brushing and moving one of her large breasts. I think I left my money in another costume. That's so hot. It's free. The man yelled, his blush growing and steam erupting from his nose. Aren't you a dear? Mount Lady yelled back, grinning wide with victory. Have no sense of shame? Kamui Woods groaned behind her, he and Death Arms both disappointingly crossing their arms. Mount Lady's Gorgias sighed, used to her trainer using her feminine wilds to seduce men into doing whatever she wanted. Soon after, the three started walking through the stands looking around. I was hoping I'd get to do some scouting while I was here, Kamui said as he looked around. Yeah, same. Death Arms nodded and looked back at the shorter, wooden man. Too bad we're working. Looks like they called in pro heroes from all over to guard this thing, Mount Lady said as she took another bite of her canned food. What a show. As they walked, they passed by three individuals walking around as well, the three notably in UA school uniforms. And where instead of walking, it was more like two of them chasing after the third. Nijire, slow down. The tallest of the three shouted, his stuck-up hair blonde, his blue eyes simplistic looking and with no visible scare. I'm excited as you are to see first years, but we don't need to rush. SS so and many people. The other man whimpered behind the taller blonde. His figure looked perpetually slumped as he shivered in nervous fear. Pale skin, pointy ears, and messy, indigo hair that mostly hid his thin, tired eyes. I can't wait, Mirio. The girl in front of them, Nijire, exclaimed as she continued speeding up ahead of them. I'm so curious. How strong are these first years? How did they feel when they were attacked by the villains? What kind of Pokemon do they have? Are they super strong, too? The girl, who sprouted out multiple questions as fast as an electric type, had an average height and fair skin, long and thick eyelashes over royal blue eyes that seemed to glow. Her periwinkle-colored hair was long, flowing down her fit and voluptuous body, enough to reach her ankles, the hair curling around her wide hips. And I need to know who was the one that girl said made an aura sphere. Nijire left that question in her mind. Is he a chosen? Like me and Master Riley? I got to find out who he is, Nijire exclaimed before leaving her two companions in the dust. He, that's Nijire for you. The tall blonde, Mirio, chuckled nervously. Come on, Namajiki. Mirio turned to his pointy-eared companion. Let's hurry before Nijire finds whoever she's looking for and maybe save him from her Nijire nest. Mirio and Amajiki ran faster to catch up to their companion. Izuku Midoriya walked out of the corridor to look out at inside of the UA Sports Festival Stadium. The stadium was massive and wide, its circular shape and high walls making it appear a more metallic version of the Roman Colosseum. As far as she could see were thousands of cheering and excited people, civilians and heroes alike, sitting around the stadium that made it look like a sea of people. Inko looked to see that atop many of rows and columns of seats were letters to better indicate where their seats are. Toshi said that he convinced All Might to get me front row seats. Inko thought, looking to her ticket to see that she was in section A3. Looking behind her to see that the section was indeed section A, Inko began walking down the steps towards the very bottom. This is great. Now I can watch Izuku compete clearly. Thanks again, Toshi. Inko thoughts back to this morning when she revealed to her son that she would be watching him in the sports festival in person. Flashback. What? You're going to the festival? Izuku shouted shocked. I thought you were going to watch it at home on the TV? That was the plan, but I managed to get tickets for the festival. Inko revealed, before raising an eyebrow. Why do you sound so shocked? Are you afraid that your sweet, supportive mother is going to embarrass you? No. That's not what I meant. Izuku quickly corrected himself. It's just that those tickets must cost like a fortune to get, and they sell out super quickly. How did you get one? Oh, it was thanks to Mr. Yagi. Inko quickly spoke, trying to hide the blush that was rising at the thought of the man. He said he managed to pull some strings with all might and get me front row seats. Inko's sweat dropped when Izuku gained a dark aura over himself, his protective son instincts acting up. Flashback over. Inko sighed. It's only a matter of time before Izuku finds out. Inko thought worried over how her son would find her new relationship. Would he be mad that me and Toshi kept it a secret for so long? I didn't really mean to keep it a secret, but it just sort of happened over time. And by then, I was so nervous to imagine how he will react. Toshi's All Might's assistant and helped him through his training. I don't want for Izuku to think Toshi betrayed his trust. Plus, there is also the fact that I haven't really dated after Hisashi and I split up, and I know he already blames himself for causing that dash. Boy, I guess the kid got more from you than just looks and waterfalls tears. A familiar woman's voice shouted out and laughed. Inko snapped out of her own mumbling to find herself at the front row where she intended to reach. She looked to her right to find the speaker, her eyes widening as she did. Mitsuki. Inko cried out. Sitting in the first two seats of the row were her longtime friend and her husband, Mitsuki and Masaru Bakugo, the parents to Katsuki Bakugo. Inko. It's been a while. Mitsuki leapt from her seat and embraced her longtime friend. Mitsuki Bakugo was just as loud and energetic as she always was, as was her appearance since they first met. Due to Mitsuki's quirk, glycerin, her body kept the same great skin quality, making her look youthful and young despite her age being in the late 30s. She looked like a female copy of her own son, Katsuki, the boy inheriting his mother's ash blonde hair and ruby red eyes, as well as her short temper when you got on her bad side. Mitsuki stood a few inches taller than Inko, her body voluptuous and attractive enough to leave men gazing for a long while. Hey Mitsuki. Inko recovered from her surprise and hugged and greeted her friend back. And what do you mean a while? It's only been a week. Hello again, Inko. Masaru said in a seat, his tone way more quieter and polite than Mitsuki's loud, energetic one. The man of the Bakugo household was almost the direct opposite of his wife and son. Where they were loud and with explosive tempers that matched Katsuki's quirk, Masaru was more calmer and passive. Despite currently sitting, he was taller than his wife by a few inches, his brown hair's spiky style one of the only things Katsuki inherited from his father, as well as most of his facial structure. Masaru also wore glasses over his brown eyes and had a short mustache. Hi, Masaru. Inko politely greeted back, struggling under Mitsuki's iron grip of a hug. Hey, don't ignore me, Mitsuki roared out, looking like a carbon copy of her son, before her facade broke into laughs. I'm just kidding. I can't ever be made at you, Inko. Inko's sweat dropped at Mitsuki's sense of humor. Mitsuki, sweetie, please calm down. Masaru shared in Inko's nervousness, trying to calm his wife down. You drawing attention? Screw off. They can stare all they want. Now, let me continue hugging my best friend. Mitsuki roared in response to the growing sweat drop of both her best friend and husband. After letting go, Mitsuki said, "So what are you doing here, Inko? I didn't know you were coming to the festival." "Well, I wasn't at first, but my boyfriend pulled some strings and got me front row seats." Inko started stuttering nervously, both at calling Toshi her boyfriend and mentioning her as of yet named boyfriend to Mitsuki. This mysterious boyfriend of yours that you still haven't told me." Mitsuki raised her eyebrow and grinned teasingly. "One of these days, I will get you to tell me who he is. I already told you that he works as an assistant at a hero agency." Inko said, not exactly lying but omitting which hero he was assisting and where he was helping to work now. "That's still not a name," Mitsuki replied before calming down considerably to a more calm demeanor. "But regardless, you said you got front row seats?" Inko showed her seat ticket. "Huh, what a coincidence." Mitsuki let out a loud chuckle of amusement. "You're sitting right next to us here. Masaru and I saved up all of our extra vacation money for this, so the brat better be grateful we're here." Inko chuckled nervously at the relationship that the Bakugo family had with one another. Katsuki was always so sure of confident of himself since an early age, but this led to a superiority complex that often led to him clashing with his own mother, who held a similar temperament to her son. What resulted in this was a fiery dynamic of mother and son yelling and arguing constantly, with rather rude words like, "Old hag." Katsuki would toss at his mother, and his mother replying in kind by calling him brat. Poor Masaru was then stuck in the middle, acting as the only source of mediation between the two. A hard and exhausting role, but one that Masaru has continued to do to this day faithfully, something that made Inko both sad for him and yet inspired. Inko snapped away from her thoughts to focus on Mitsuki, who now looked serious and ashamed. "Our sons are going to compete against each other in the festival. We both know that." Inko nodded, entirely focused in what Mitsuki had to say. "And we both know about the history that the two share, and the very high chances that the two will fight and roughly, too. Me and Masaru just want to apologize again for the things our son has done to yours for so long." The two women of the household were not idiots, nor were they blind. Despite his numerous attempts to keep the truth from her, Izuku couldn't hide the suffering that he faced under the hands of Katsuki Bakugo from Inko. She would notice the growing separation between the two boys as they grew, as well as the growing amount and severity of Izuku's wounds from the bullying he faced outside of home. It didn't take a genius to know where he got those burn marks he tried to hide, or the reason why Inko had to order a lot of spare uniforms with the amount of burn holes in some of them. Mitsuki likewise saw the signs clear as day. The growing animosity and vitriol that Bakugo growled when talking about Izuku, or Deku as Bakugo always said, and despite scolding the boy every time he said it, the lesson would not stick. It only grew worse really, with the more praise her begrudgingly talented son received from his peers and teachers. But what she despised the most was that the growing bullying and its consequences reached further to her and Inko, the two growing closer apart, with less times hanging out to not speaking to each other for months. It wasn't because the two hated each other, the two never could, but rather because the more they spent together, the more awkward it was, spending time with the mother of a bully and mother of his victim, both helpless to do anything. Despite her knowledge, Inko knew reporting it would do absolutely nothing. The times she had reported and wished for this treatment of her son to stop was met with insincere promises at best and blatant dismissal at worst. The bullying and mistreatment of her quirkless son, from students and teachers alike, would only grow with her complaints, and the school would do nothing to damage the reputation of their future hero star, in hopes they could ride the coattails of Bakugo's future fame. And the same applied to Mitsuki, who, as much as she wanted to, couldn't sabotage her son's future, in fear that he would grow to truly resent her and go down a darker path. The best the two could do was remain silent and let their guilt fester and grow with shame. "It's all right, Suki," Inko replied, calling her friend by her nickname. You know I never blamed you or Masaru for the actions of your son, Izuku either. He still calls you his Auntie Mitsuki and Uncle Masaru. We can't change the past any more than we could have controlled our sons, and whatever blame we have we will have to live with. All we can do is strive to grow and be better than who we were and help our boys be better, too. Mitsuki was taken aback by Inko's words, before smiling warmly. Masaru, behind her, smiling as well. Your son is lucky to have such a wonderful mother, and I'm lucky to have the best friend I could have ever asked for, Mitsuki replied, quickly wiping a tear from her eyes. Please, Suki, I'm the lucky one, Inko replied, bringing her friend into a hug this time, for having an even more wonder son and a more wonderful friend. After the two broke their hug, and getting one of appreciation from Masaru, Inko sat down, waiting eagerly and dreadfully for the festival to start and what dangers her son will have to face with. The festival is always a hard and dangerous event, Inko thought, remembering the times she and Izuku would watch the festival and all the dangerous trials the UA students always faced. There was a time where I wouldn't want Izuku to do any of this, but that time has passed. Inko pressed a hand to her heart as the festival was about to begin with present, mixed voice. I have confidence in my son, and I know, win or lose, that you will be amazing, Izuku. I failed to support you then, but I will support you now. Meanwhile, Class 1A waited impatiently inside their waiting room, either by standing or pacing around energetic, sitting nervously, or stretching their limbs to be as ready as can be. Aw man, Mina whined as she looked and stretched out her UA uniform shirt. I was totally hoping I could have worn my costume. At least everyone will be in uniforms. Ojiro spoke up as he stretched. To keep things fair, the hero courses won't be the only ones participating. True to Mina's and Ojiro's words, all of Class 1A wore their blue and white UA sports uniforms, their Pokemon's Pokeballs strapped tightly to the belts around the waist. Most were indifferent to the requirement, except a couple. Bakugo was unhappy, unable to show his costume off, enraged that he had to play fair for the worthless extras. Serena was begrudgingly on the same boat as Bakugo, but instead of being, because she wanted to show her costume, not that it wouldn't hurt to show to the pros watching, without the water stored in her suit, Serena feared that she would be put at a disadvantage without a nearby source of water to pull from. However, Serena and the girls found a positive to the uniforms, mainly in how well Izuku's uniform hugged his lean, muscular form. Ajui croaked in approval to see Izuku's form once again, memories of their recent fishing trip coming to her mind. Hagakure giggled perversely at how the black undershirt hugged Izuku's torso, like a second skin before it was barred from her eyes, when Izuku zipped up the rest of the blue uniform. Uraraka and Momo blushed as they stared at Izuku's forearms and biceps that were shown pleasantly past the sleeves. Mina, too, had to admit the pros when it came to Tachi uniform, grinning and licking her lips at Midoriya's, but hugged by his pants. The only thing that Serena still resented about wearing the uniforms was still the lack of water. Water she could use to splash and have Izuku's form more tightly shown. Kyoka scoffed and rolled her eyes. Oh, come on, have some dignity, girls. Kyoka thought, annoyed at how the rest of her female classmates were drooling over Midoriya like a pack of hungry puccinas. Though, Kyoka herself couldn't help the occasional sideways glance at Midoriya's biceps. Izuku breathed in deeply, and exhaling. Deep breaths calm your nerves, Izuku thought. Feeling the shaking in his belt, Izuku turned his thoughts to telepathic communication. Settle down, Pikachu. It's just for the festival. Oh yeah, it's just for the festival, Pikachu. Settle down, Pikachu. Pikachu telepathically retorted in a mocking imitation Deka's voice. You try to calm down when you are in a spherical death trap for what might be ours. Ugh, oh how Arceus condemns me. A smooth, slightly croaking voice rang in his head. That my defeat upon capture would have been from a frightened rat that plagues my ears. Okay, first off, what ears? You don't have any? Pikachu mentally yelled back. Secondly, you challenged me, Bubble Brains, and lost. I wish to fight a worthy opponent strong against my typing to test my skills and prove our trainer worthy. Froakie croaked back. While Master Izuku has admirably exceeded my expectations, Your worthiness I find lacking and your victory attributed to Master Izuku and his strategy. Come on out and face me again, mon. Pikachu retorted, Izuku tiredly imagining Pikachu clashing heads with Froakie as electricity sparked in his cheeks and, comically, through his eyes, clashing with Froakie's blue one. Then we'll see who is worthy. Sir Fancy Talk. I am sorely tempted. Sparkrat. Froakie croaked back. Izuku, as well as Eevee and Combuskin in their Pokeballs, sweat-dropped at the banter between Pikachu and Froakie again. Ever since their duel at the marsh and Froakie full recovery from their battle, Izuku's new Pokemon and Pikachu had formed a rivalry that consisted of a lot of back-and-forth bantering between the two, hurling insults and names at each other when not, and even during battling. This banter, of course, had plagued Izuku and the other two to no end. Izuku at least looked on the bright side of things and found that Froakie proved unusually powerful compared to his other species, keeping up and clashing with Pikachu on even footing despite his type disadvantage. Froakie also proved as loyal and great with commands as much as both Combuskin and Eevee. Truly, the Pokemon had more than proved his place in his team, if proving so was ever in Izuku's intentions, and had quickly made friends and bonds with Combuskin, Eevee, and even Pikachu, on a begrudging respect of their skills despite their banter saying contrary, and proved more a benefit to push the two hard in their training. Though Izuku didn't need them arguing right now, needing to focus for the festival. Will you two quiet down? Izuku yelled at the two. We need to focus on the festival, not your bantering. The two immediately went silent. Apologies, Master Izuku. Froakie replied, his tone now more humbly. I forget myself. It won't happen again. TSK kiss ass. Pikachu scoffed. Why you dash? Hey. Izuku quickly shut down the bantering before it continued again. That's enough, or so help me I will force you both to have endure Mr. Mime's act for a whole day. For all his life, his mom's Mr. Mime loved to put on theatric mime acts to entertain. Izuku always found them funny, especially as a kid, but Eevee and Pikachu absolutely despised them, Combuskin and Froakie joining them in their displeasure of the painful, awkward acts. Yes, sir. The two quickly replied, their tone fearful of the threat, and quickly went silent. Everyone, get ready. Ida yelled, entering the waiting room from outside. We're entering the arena soon, just in time. Izuku sighed. Just as Izuku was about to order the class to go, he was interrupted again, but not by his Pokemon, Midoriya. Todoroki spoke up and walked up before him, gaining the attention of his target and the rest of the class. Todoroki. Izuku replied with a curt nod, slight confusion on his face. Nervousness started to fill Midoriya once again at the cold and blank stare from Todoroki's mismatched eyes. It didn't help that, much like Momo, Todoroki stood an inch or two taller than him and forced Izuku to stare up at him. What's up? Todoroki was silent for a moment, his eyes narrowing for a split second as if contemplating his words. It's clear that on an objective standpoint that I'm stronger than you, Todoroki finally said. Izuku and the class were taken back by his sudden blunt words that even took Azui by surprise. Bakugo stared at the two with narrowed, angry eyes of his own. While our Pokemon battle ended on an official draw, it's clear to everyone that you defeated me had you not forfeited your Pikachu. Todoroki continued, and though you are indeed powerful, my quirk's power far exceeds yours. Izuku's surprised face hardened into a serious frown and stare, staying silent until the white and red-haired teen finished. But you got All Might in your corner, helping you out. Surprise and panic quickly took back residence in Izuku's eyes, going so stiff it would be mistaken for Todoroki actually freezing him with his quirk. Bakugo was likewise taken back by Todoroki's words, only to glare harder at Izuku with more anger, suspicion, and even jealousy. Serena's eyes widened as well, her suspicions on Izuku, his sudden quirk, and All Might rearing back in her mind. I'm not here to pry about what's going on between the two of you, Todoroki continued before Izuku had a chance to reply, his cold eyes narrowing. But know this. Remember what I said after our match. I will win and defeat you, with my own power. Consider this my own declaration of war, class republic. Izuku frowned and glared back at Todoroki, a bead of sweat rolling down Izuku's side. The class was silent. Uraraka, Serena, and Ajui looked between the two with growing concern. Momo and Ida frowned at Todoroki, his attempt of a mock at the end not going unnoticed by the vice rep and chief class officer. Bakuga's glare only intensified. Whoa, what's with these declarations of war lately? Kaminari asked, slightly unnerved by the cold seriousness between the two. Yeah, why are you picking a fight all of a sudden? Kirishima walked up and placed a hand on Todoroki's shoulder. And right before we get started, I must concur, Ida said, making his way and placing a hand on Todoroki's other shoulder. Please desist this clearly malicious behavior towards our class rep, Todoroki. We're not here to make friends, Todoroki coldly replied, brushing off the two's hands, turning away from the three and marching towards the door. And don't forget, class officer, that we aren't supposed to go easy on each other. Don't forget this isn't a team effort. Izuku looked down, his hands tightening into a clenched fist. Todoroki. Izuku spoke up, his tone enough to get the taller boy to stop in his tracks and turn back to face him. I don't know what's running through your head, or why you seem so determined to challenge me, but you're right. Objectively, you are stronger. Izuku thought back to Todoroki's power and precision against the Nomu at the USJ. In fact, you might have the greatest potential than anyone in the hero course. It's why you got in so easily, right? Hey, Midoriya, maybe you're being a little too hard on yourself and us. Kirishima nervously said. No, I'm not. Izuku cut Kirishima off, thinking back to Shinso, Mineta, Tetsu, and Monoma. The other courses they're going to be gunning for us with all they have, and we are all going to have to give it our all if we want to stand out. He turned back to the rest of the class with a serious expression. And remember what I said 2 weeks ago. I told you all to challenge yourselves at the festival and prove this is where we belong. Well, now I say this. As class rep, I challenge you all not just to prove to them that you belong, but to each other as well. I want you all not to hold back against each other. Izuku continued. Uraraka and Serena stared at Izuku stunned before smiling, determined. Kyuka raised an eyebrow, and Aoima looked at Deku while mid-pose. I want you all to give this tournament everything you got and more. Momo and Ida smiling and nodding in approval. Tokoyami nodded too, while Shoji paid attention silently, and Ojiro and Sato stretched their arms. I want you to challenge each other, friends or not, to prove your worth. Ajui croaked approvingly, Nina and Hagakure pumped up their fists, Kaminari, Siro, and Kirishima grinned, the latter pounding his fists together, and even Shy Koda looked determined. Izuku raised his fist into the air and declared, live up to the words of this school, show them to the world and go beyond, plus ultra style. Yeah, the rest of the class, except Bakugo and Todoroki cheered. Izuku looked back to Todoroki, his eyes alight with energy. And I'll be aiming for the top, too. I'll see you all there. Izuku finished. Todoroki narrowed his eyes, a glimmer of anger peeking out. Fine, he simply said. You heard our class rep. Ida yelled out. Let's make him and ourselves proud. Go beyond. Plus ultra. Class 1A, sans Izuku and Todoroki as they continued their glaring, raised their fists. Meanwhile, Bakuga scoffed his teeth bare in a growling frown. Hey, all you rapid sports fans. Make some noise. Present Mick's voice boomed throughout the stadium, the resulting cheers and screams of excitement nearly drowning out his own voice. Get those cameras ready, media hordes. Mike referred to the line of cameramen lined up and readying their cameras. This year we are only bringing you the hottest performances in sports festival history, guaranteed. Mike continued, Mike currently sitting in the announcement booth at the very top of the stadium. Aizawa, still wrapped up in bandages, sat beside him. I'm radio talk show host, teacher, and your sports festival announcer of all things hot and spicy, Preza Mike. And joining me as my co-host, everyone's favorite underground hero, fellow teacher, and world's grumpiest grumpy Gus, Eraserhead. Why did I let you talk me into this? Eraserhead grumbled, resulting in some actual laughs from the stadium crowd. Hee hee, poor Mr. Aizawa. Mirio rubbed the back of his neck as he, Nijire, and Amajiki sat at one of the front row seats. He still doesn't like the attention. Same here. Amajiki shuddered beside him, his slumped form quivering in fear. There are so many people, so loud. C can't picture them as potatoes if they are so loud. They must be staring at me. Gulp, I'm going to hurl. Nobody is looking at you, Tamaki. No need to worry. Nijire assured the shy teen with a chipper voice. They're all excited for it to begin. And so am I. What do you think Class 1A will look like? Will they be cocky because they survived a villain attack? What about the other courses like Class 1B? They are in the hero course too. Will they be jealous of 1A? Will that make them more competitive? I'm sure your questions will be answered soon, Nijire. Mirio responded, choosing not to reply to every question that Nijire fired rapidly. I think Mr. Mike is about to start introducing the first-year classes. I only got one question for you all before we start the show. Are Y ready to rumble? Mike roared out. The stadium met him with a choir of affirmative roars and cheers. That's what I like to hear, folks. Mike roared again. Ugh, too noisy. Eraser grumbled again. Just started so I can get back to my nap quicker. Back at the Midoriya residence, Mr. Mime sat on the couch, watching and recording the festival from the TV, eagerly waiting to see Izuku and his Pokemon, wondering what act to perform in congratulations. Ganma and the Ajui family sat and ate as the festival was beginning on their TV. Satsuki and Samidare, Lombra sitting beside Samidare, and Wishiwashi swimming contently in a fishing bowl on Satsuki's lap. Hope to see a lot of their big sis Tsu and big bro Izuku. Sitting in a dark room, his hands wrapped in bandages, Tamura Shigaraki sat on a chair, looking onto the bright screen of his computer showcasing the festival. Watch closely, Tamura Shigaraki. The menacing voice spoke through the monitor behind Shigaraki. The students in the hero course may become your foes in the future. Study and watch them closely. Shigaraki replied with mumbled growl, yet remained silent as he watched, subconsciously raising his right hand to his neck. Yet as it touched, Shigaraki registered the once broken, yet still healing hand covered in bandages. Shigaraki growled hatefully at the constant reminder the bandaged hand was, and switched to his left to scratch and claw at his neck. I wonder if that brat will show up. Shigaraki thought, recalling to a certain green-haired brat that broke his hand in the first place. At the memory, Shigaraki scratched his neck harder. I sure hope so. I'll do what Master says and watch you closely, brat. Very closely. Sitting in a dark room and watching very closely as well. The wild, raven black-haired man sat on his couch. Lucario stood at the side while Riola sat on the couch beside the man eating a piece of a chocolate bar. The man smirked, his eyes still hidden by his wild hair, taking a sip of juice as he waited for the festival to start and see Master Teicher's, the one for himself. In contrast, Cynthia sat on her throne-like leather chair with the light illuminating her penthouse living room. A Garchomp laying down yet watching the flat-screen TV. Cynthia sipped water from her glass, her amber eyes full of excitement and curiosity. Let's see what kind of talent we will see, she said. In another dark room, illuminated by the light of his computer, Nightai stared at the monitor in critical anticipation to see the boy that All Might passed his quirk onto and deny him from being worthy. Let me hear you all scream as our students make their way to the stage. Mike roared out. Inko, Mitsuki, and Masaru sat eagerly for the students to pour in and begin. Masaru pointed a video camera up and towards the stadium to record live. While Inko clutched her seat in excitement for her son, a lingering part in her mind thought, asterisk, sigh, asterisk, it's a shame that Toshi couldn't make it for the festival. I'm sure that he would love to see how far Izuku has progressed. Meanwhile, up with the rest of the teachers in the teacher stands, All Might watched anxiously as the festival began. You must proudly introduce yourself to the world, and proudly say, I am here. All Might's words rang in Izuku's head as his iconic red sneaker was bathed in the sunlight. I won't let you down, All Might, Mom. Izuku thought, his eyes ablaze with fiery determination. I'll show this world who I truly am. This first group are no strangers to the spotlight, Mike announced. You know them for withstanding a villain attack. The dazzling students lighting up the world with solid gold skills. Introducing the hero course of Class 1A. Class 1A stepped through the tunnel and out into the large field and the deafening cheers of the crowd. Izuku leading the charge, confidently. Inko almost burst into tears as she saw her baby boy look so strong and confident. Mitsuki, meanwhile, was roaring out, trying to get Katsuki's attention to get a good picture. So that's Class 1A. Mirio said, smilingly inspecting the group of 20 teens. I see some interesting quirks already with some of them. But what they can truly do is left to be seen. Amajiki responded, now looking at the students closely. I think the blonde and the scarred boy are ones to look out for. They look so scary. Nijire was in a world on her own as she stared at Class 1A, suddenly all cheer and smiles gone, and resorting to serious curiosity. Nijire's royal blue eyes flashed a brighter crystal blue glow. The world lost most color and became mostly black and blue, with wispy wavy lines of blue and other slight colors to trace the outlines of people's shape. As she looked and focused on the group of students, she could see many different shades of colors of their aura, for example, a raging, hateful red hue coming from the ash blonde one, a mix of cold, icy blue and fiery, vengeful red from the scarred one, and multiple different shades coming from the girls, yet they all had a shade of loving, sweet pink, with the purple-haired one with weird jacks coming from her ears only a slight glimmer. Ah, almost all of them already have found love. Nijire cooed delightfully. But to who dash? As Nijire traced the point of their affections, Nijire's eyes widened. No way. Nijire thought in disbelief. The certain green-haired teen's soul was brimming, almost overflowing with aura, mostly an emerald green that churned like storm. She also found 8 sparkling multicolored lights hidden inside the inky black of the green storm. The very flow of it as she sensed it was almost suffocating, yet she felt drawn to it, somehow. Is this the one that made that aura sphere I heard? Nijire thought, her mind exploding with questions. He has to be. His aura is almost overflowing compared to the rest. It looks almost as vast as mine, maybe even more than Master Riley. But is he disguising his aura as his quirk, or does he have a quirk and aura, too? As he lead his class, Ida and Momo beside him, Izuku looked around to see the scope of the crowd of cheering onlookers and viewers. Oh man, so many people. Izuku thought, a shiver of nervous fear shooting up his spine. Meanwhile, Amajiki suddenly turned his full attention towards Midoriya, suddenly feeling a strong kinship with him. Another shiver ran down the back of Izuku's neck, though this time, it gave Izuku slight pause. This feeling, it's just like back when I first met Mr. Taisher. Izuku thought, his head buzzing, his ears burning as he felt like someone was watching him. Unlike the possibly millions of onlookers, both within the stands and throughout the world, this one feeling of being stared at felt like he was being more than watched, but observed, analyzed, his entire being desiccated for answers. Izuku figured that this must be what Bakugo and everyone else felt when he analyzed their quirks. I hope that we can still give our best performances possible even though there is a lot of people watching. Ida spoke up, drawing Izuku's attention away from his thoughts. I suppose this is just another aspect of being a hero we all have to get used to. Snapped free from his thoughts, Izuku nodded, agreeing with Ida. Izuku recalled how much attention All Might, and pro-heroes in general, drew in with their very presence. Stilling his nerves and remembering his goal, Izuku continued to strive forwards, putting the thoughts over his analyzing onlooker behind him for now. Present Mike sure talked us up a lot. Kinda makes me nervous, Kirishima confessed as he looked around. He turned to look ahead of him towards Bakugo, his head slightly slumped and his eyes hidden by the shadow of his hair. How are you feeling, man? I'm not worried, Bakugo replied, his ruby-red eyes appearing in a determined glare, his grin near malicious in nature. Makes me want to win this thing even more. Now, that's a manly response there, Kirishima exclaimed. They haven't been getting nearly as much screen time, but look out for this group, folks. They are ripe full of talent. Welcome Hero Course Class 1B. With mixed supportive, yet brief introduction, Class 1B walked out from another tunnel into the large field, Class 1A to the left of them, and other class courses coming from the right of them. Among the second class of hero students were many unique individuals, from their tallest member looking like a walking glue dispenser, another student who looked like a more livelier skeleton with hair, a girl with horns and horse-like feet, and another girl with vines for hair. Leading the class was Tetsu, Monoma, and a girl with orange hair and a ponytail. Oh man, look at all the people who showed up. A girl with mossy green hair and a sharp-toothed grin whistled. I think I see some pros in the stands. All the more reason to give this festival our all. The orange-haired girl in front of her replied, "To show what we are made of." Aye, Class Republic, the greenette replied with a mock, joking salute. Looking to her left, she spotted Class 1A as they walked towards the center of the field like them. So that's Class 1A, huh? They look serious. Not at all like what Monoma spoke about them. That's why you shouldn't listen to Monoma's baiting, Tokage. The orange-haired girl replied again, letting out a tired sigh at the mention of their overzealous classmate. Competition can lead to mutual growth and camaraderie, but only by being tempered with honor and humility. As you command, Master Kendo. Tokage replied with a humorous tone and mock bow, much to Kendo's eye rolls and amused grin. Tokage looked back to their rival class, her attention focused on two. Other greenettes. She muttered, the female one slightly hunched, frog-like in appearance and with long sea-green hair, while the other male one had a more darker, emerald green hair. As she focused on the boy's serious face and determined energy, Setsuna licked her lips. Interesting. Cute ones, too. Next up, General Studies classes C, D, and Mike introduced the 3 General Studies courses quickly and briefly. Leading the group of mostly plain and miserable-looking students were Shinso and Mineta. Then there's the support classes F, G, and H. Mike again introduced the next classes with almost no fanfare. Most of the students of the 3 classes wore lightweight armor, padding, and gloves. One of the most notable of their numbers included a girl with pink-haired, shaped like dreadlocks at the ends who wore a weird set of goggles and headwear, a special-looking vest strapped over her rather large chest, and her hands covered in large gloves. And finally, Business Class 1, J, and K. Mike finished introducing the classes with groups of rather plain, normal-looking students that gave off a blend of disinterest and attentiveness. Give it up for all of UA's first-year contestants. Mike roared out to the roar of the crowds. I get the feeling that we are just here to make the hero students look better. Shinso looked back to see one of his classmates groan out those words, he and the rest looking miserable. I can't wait for this to be over with. The girl beside him groaned too. Hey, don't listen to them. Shinso heard and looked down to see a smirking Mineta, giving him a thumbs up. More room for us to show our skills, right? Shinso studied the only member of his class that was as determined as he was. Shinso nodded in agreement and continued trekking towards the middle with the rest, casting the groans of his classmates out from his mind, reigniting the strength within towards his goal. As all the classes gathered in the middle, the crack of a flogger-style whip sounded as it was raised into the air. Quiet, a woman's voice proclaimed loudly. Now, it is time for the introductory speech. The men and few women in the stands suddenly blushed and gawked in lustful awe. The chief umpire for the first years is the R-rated hero, Midnight. One pro hero in the stands exclaimed in awe. Standing on the large, white podium, Midnight stood. Her hips struck out in a pose. A red, eyeless, domino mask she wore over her sky-blue eyes, a small beauty mark just below her left eye. Long, spiky, dark purple hair flowed down to her waist and over her voluptuous body, clothed in a rather seductive hero costume resembling a dominatrix outfit. A black, breastless leotard, similar to a corset, covered her waist, nether regions, her neckline, and the valley between her breasts, emblazoned with red gemstones, while her shoulders, arms, legs, Hips and breasts were clothed in a thin white bodysuit that hugged her body like a second skin. A burgundy red utility belt stuck around her hips, her thigh-high, black, translucent, garter stocking attached to it, and her feet coved in black, heel, knee boots. One half of a pair of cufflinks she wore around her wrists, where the white of her bodysuit ended. Amazing! A pro-hero gawked with a lustful blush. Seriously, the other years don't know what they're missing. Another hero agreed. The blushes and jealousy from most of the women extended further from the crowds and into the students gathered before the pro-heroine. Izuku, blushing red, did all he could from staring at midnight for too long as if his life depended on it, which, judging from the jealous, attentive stares of the girls beside him, it might as well have been. Mineta was left a blushing, drooling mess, salivating so much it flowed comically off his slack-jawed mouth like a waterfall. Someone should talk to Miss Midnight about what she is wearing, Kirishima muttered, a light blush on his cheeks. Yeah, that costume should come with a warning. Kaminari nodded, blushing and drooling. Not that I'm complaining. Kaminari whispered that last part. Is it really appropriate apparel for a high school game? An ever-stoic Tokoyami questioned. Silence, everyone. Midnight shouted out with another crack of her flogger-style whip. And for the student pledge, we have the student who placed first in the entrance exam, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku was frozen in fright as the students, worse, the eyes of the world stared at him. His nervousness and fear tripled. Well, fuck. Get ready to die of embarrassment, guys. Pikachu supportively said. At least try to be supportive. Combuskin yelled at the electric mouse. Nervously, Izuku started to move towards the stand. As he walked, he could hear the snickers and scoffs of the students behind him, most coming from the general studies students, Izuku could tell. He could distinctly hear Monoma from before snicker before his voice descended into a whisper, but he knew what words he likely had to say about him. But what was worse was the stares and glares. Todoroki's cold, narrowed ones, Bakugo's enraged, hateful ones, Shinsu's emotionless ones, and the stares of the viewing audience of the world. As he made it to the mic, turning around, Izuku looked around towards his friends and classmates. What he was met with warmed his fearful heart. Kirishima, Siro, and Kaminari grinned and nodded at him, Kirishima giving him a thumbs up. Mina and Hagakure grinned excitedly. At least Izuku thought Hagakure was grinning by how jumpy she was. Momo and Ida gave supportive nods to him, urging him on with smiles. Kyuka, Tokoyami, and the rest gave either nods or looks of support and urging as well, and Uraraka and Ajui nodded and smiled in support. He even saw Mineta among the front of crowd, giving him a grin and thumbs up, and Izuku's eyes widened a bit as he remembered his speech to Mineta after he was expelled from the hero course. Izuku's eyes then met Serena's. She looked at him with loving pride, her eyes bright and full of support, her smile wide and cheerful. She nodded and placed a hand over her heart. She didn't need to speak for Izuku to know the words she meant. Speak from the heart. Whenever you are nervous or unsure what to say, look inside, to your heart, your soul, and the words they hold. Speak from heart, and you will never go wrong. Go on, Izuku. Eevee's voice spoke in his head. Serena believes in you. They believe in you. Inko and All Might believe in you. We all believe in you. Go on and show the world who you are. Warmth filled his heart. The glares vanished from his sight. The fear numbed to his senses. Izuku breathed in deeply, imaging his mother looking at him with love and pride, All Might looking at with expectations. After everything you have done for me, I won't let you all down. Any of you. Izuku sighed and spoke. All men are not created equal. Izuku began to the silence of the crowd and world. I learned this lesson when I was only 4 years old. The world we live in is not full of sunshine and rainbows. It is a cruel world, cruel and unfair. A world where the strong look and bring down the weak, the innocent and the suffering. Izuku looked down at his open palm. For most of my life, my quirk never came, only coming to be a few months ago, and for 11 years I lived quirkless and treated like trash for it. I was bullied, beaten down, mocked, laughed, spat on, and looked upon with disgust and ridicule for something I had no control of, for being born different. Even my Pokemon, my family, was treated harshly for even knowing me. Izuku continued, as the memories of the past came to his mind. All my life, I wanted to be a hero, but I was always met with scorn and ridicule, told no over and beaten into the dirt for dreaming. I was even told to take my own life and pray to have a quirk in the next life. I won't lie and say I never considered it at times. And I'm not alone in this pain. There are others out there who went through the same or similar, who are turned away, beaten, abused, and treated harshly by this cruel, unfair world. Izuku steeled his nerves and breathed in. But every time I got beaten down, I would always get back up. No matter how hard they punched, kicked, or mocked me, I always got right back up. Because I was given strength by a power beyond any quirk or Pokemon, a power that all people of this world share, one that shines a light through the darkest of times. Hope. A hope to be stronger than the day before, to be better than what came before, for those who ridicule me to be better and be redeemed. A hope for a brighter tomorrow. Izuku clenched his fists and looked up to the crowd, to his friends, family, to the world, his eyes ablaze with a burning fire. That is the hero that I wanted to be. Not a symbol of peace, not just the #1 hero. I wanted to be something more. I want to be a hero of hope, a symbol of hope, one who faces any evil and villainy and wins no matter what, that helps those who can't help themselves, that looks to them with a smile and say that everything is going to be okay. You must proudly introduce yourself to the world and proudly say dash. Because I am here. Izuku proclaimed with a powerful voice that shook the crowd and their hearts. So I trained, grew stronger, became better, and one day my quirk finally came forth and still I trained. Never giving in, never holding back, never giving in to the world telling me to move, for I said no, you move. And finally, one day, I was finally told what I always wanted to hear. Young man, you too can become a hero. All Might's eyes grew wide, awe and pride gleaming out. Bakuga's anger was quickly overtaken by shock and stunned. My hope came true, my dream came true, and now I am here to train, to grow, to become the hero I always wanted to be what a hero is supposed to be, what I will be. Izuku looked to the students stunned in silence. And not just me, we are here, all of us. Izuku gestured to the students before him. We are all here to give it out our all, to be the heroes we want to be, to show the world who we are, and to go beyond our limits. Looking to crowd of students, his eyes landing on Todoroki, Bakugo, Monoma, Shinso, and more, Izuku continued. Some of you here declared war on me, and I said that words aren't enough. This world will not listen to your complaining and whining about your lot in life. Only action will decide your future, and the hope and strength to guide you. So, I say to you all, my fellow students and competitors, to give this tournament your all. Come at me with all you got, because I will in turn come at you with all I got, to fight for your dreams and go beyond. Raising a fist into the air, eyes ablaze with energy, Izuku smiled to the world wide and shining. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy this year's sports festival as we promise to do our best and go beyond. Plus Ultra. Yeah. The stadium roared out in cheer, the screams nearly deafening Izuku. Ultra, Ultra, Ultra. The crowd chanted in unison, standing tall and fists raised in the air like him. Inko wept and cried out in pure joy and love, seeing her baby boy becoming the man he was always destined to be, a hero to inspire and give hope to others. Mitsuki and Masaru smiled softly at their surrogate nephew and clapped and cheered. Underneath his bandages, Aizawa smiled and nodded, approving. Nizu clapped in approval with the other teachers, keeping the logical side and valuable information of Izuku's past in the back of his head to praise his students' words and spirit. Taisher closed his eyes and smiled, pleased, knowing he found the one. Wow, that was awesome. Mirio cheered as he clapped enthusiastically. He's got me all powered up. Now I can't wait to see what he will do. His life, Amajiki muttered as he clapped and smiled. So familiar. Like yours, Mirio. No offense, Tamaki, but I think this kid makes mine look pale by comparison. Mirio replied. Nijire was silent as she stared at Izuku Midoriya. During his speech, she was blown away by the wave of passion and the powerful surge of aura following. Her face blushed pink, her heart fluttered and raced, all thoughts in her mind fading away and replaced with only one question. Are you the one, Izuku Midoriya? The raven-haired man's wide mouth closed into a grin, his Lucario nodding, approving Izuku's words, and Riola beginning to cheer and jump for the boy. A hero of hope, huh? The man thought, ironically, a surge of hope starting to sprout from his own soul. Maybe the old man was right after all. We'll see. Cynthia rubbed her chin and looked upon the boy that even stunned her with his words, even gaining Garchomp's attention and approval. What an interesting find, Cynthia muttered to herself, not curious to see what will come of this boy. Mr. Mime jumped and clapped for Izuku, crying out his name multiple times as he cheered for joy. The Azui family was in likewise celebration for their already decided member of the family. Satsuki and even Samidare at first cried at the beginning words of Izuku's painful past. Baru was horrified and saddened, and Ganma was beyond enraged on Izuku's behalf. But after his words of encouragement and declaration of hope, the Azui family was given hope for Izuku and their daughter to do well. Ultra, ultra, ultra. The Azui family cheered with the crowd, even with Shawashi and Lombra cheering in their own ways. That brat. That brat. Shigaraki growled hatefully, clawing at his neck more and more. Enraged by the audacity of the green-haired teen he now knew as Izuku. Strangely, the man who spoke through the TV was silent. Naitai was silent as he watched. At first, he was taken back, his unfazable seriousness replaced by shock. Then his fists tightened, his fists clenched white, and he growled. How dare he? Naitai growled, finding offense in Midoriya's words, finding his declaration of surpassing the symbol of peace, as if it was surpassable and flawed, disrespectful towards All Might's legacy. Why? Why did you choose someone so unworthy, All Might? All Might stood with the rest of the teachers and clapped, his smile so wide it threatened to break his face. A surge of overwhelming pride filled the symbol of peace's heart as he gazed upon his successor. Any shadow of a thought he possibly had destroyed harder than a full-powered Detroit smash. Izuku's speech touched many of the hearts of the student as well. The business course students examined him with newfound interest, as well as the support course students, with even the pink-haired girls smiling wide and interested. The general studies students were wide-eyed and slack-jawed, tears of guilt, sympathy, and ignited passion welling their once miserable eyes. Mineta wailed dramatically and jumped and clapped for his friend who inspired him to continue to hope and never give up. Shinso stared wide eyes at Izuku with surprise. He's just like me, Shinso thought, his thoughts going back to the past, the stairs, and the Snickers. Monoma gawked at Izuku Midoriya, his words somehow resonating in him, before blind pride clouded his judgment and glared hatefully and jealously at him. Just you wait, Izuku Midoriya. I will make you regret those words, and we will see who is truly the star of this school. Monoma thought. The rest of Class 1B felt differently to their overzealous member with many wide-eyed, smiling, nodding, and inspired. Tetsu was practically crying at Midoriya's manliness. Kendo nodded approvingly and clapped for her fellow class rep, and Tokeage smiled widely, her heart beating wildly, both inspired and interested. Damn it, sniff asterisk. That was the most manliest speech I've ever heard. Kirishima exclaimed, rivers of tears that would rival Izuku and his mother flowing free from his eyes. I'm so blessed to have a Pika bro like him. Kaminari joined his red-haired classmate in wailing and cheer. I'm so pumped up. Nina and Hagakure hugged each other as they cried buckets upon Izuku's speech, resisting every urge in their bodies to run up and hug the broccoli-haired teen they've grown to like. Azui croaked joyfully for Izuku. wiping away a rare tear of emotion from her eyes. Kyuka stared at Izuku with wide eyes, while her heart beat loudly. I think I'm starting to see why the girls are so interested in him, she thought numbly. Momo covered her mouth, trying to keep back the sobs of joy and pride for her friend and crush, tears welling up her eye. Ida clapped passionately, happy for his friend, now completely as sure of his choice to vote for Izuku to be class rep, and see as a worthy rival. Todoroki was even taken back, his cold eyes widened in shock at how similar he and Midoriya's pasts are. His scarred side of his face twitched and itched, a flash of memory to a woman with white hair popping up in his head that caused him to hiss in pain. Bakugo stared numbly at Deku, silent shock drowning out the cheers and claps for the green-haired nerd. His fury and anger came back then with a passion, glaring hatefully at his former punching bag, unaware of his place. Deku, I'll show you your place, you worthless cater pie. Bakugo growled mentally. Deku. Uraraka thought, wiping away her tears, his words resonating with her and her parents' past, the thumping in her heart growing louder and more passionately as she stared at Izuku, his words setting her ablaze with strength and hope. Izuku. Serena choked up happily, feeling tears flow down her face as Izuku spoke from the heart. Her hands clenched her shirt over her heart tightly and felt like she fell in love with Izuku all over again. Izuku stood frozen and stunned by the loud cheers and claps for him. Izuku didn't know what to expect of the crowd as he gave his bold speech. Disbelief, booing, maybe some light cheers and claps, but the roaring approval of the crowd made Izuku as frozen and stunned as they were only a few moments ago. A most excellent speech, Master Izuku. He heard Focus speak in his mind. Truly an inspiring speech I knew only you could deliver with such passion. That was amazing, Izuku. Combuskin cheered as well. Don't you dare belittle your speech's impact. Look. They love it, as we did. That's our boss for ya. Never doubted you for a second. Pikachu jumped in, ignoring Combuskin's sputters of disbelief. I knew you could do it, Izuku. Izuku was taken back by Pikachu's last words, how emotionally sincere they were, in contrast to Pikachu's normal, cool guy facade, but when he called him by his name, he knew the words to be full of sincerity and pride. Izuku could already feel his lips quivering. I never doubted you either, Izuku. Eevee finally said, Izuku feeling the smile on Eevee's face. Look at the crowd and how they loved your speech. They love you, as we do. You made us, Serena, your classmates, your mother, and All Might proud. Izuku choked upon a sob, tears flowing down his cheeks, and his teeth mashing together in a painful, yet joyful smile, flashing it to the sky above, where his fist struck upwards. Oh yeah, give it up to Izuku Midoriya for that awesome, soul-stirring speech. Mike roared out, the crowd cheering even louder than before. What did you think about the speech from your student, Eraser? It was a bit long, but it not only boosted the crowd's enthusiasm, it worked to embolden the students to do their best. Eraser analyzed and summarized the speech with a nod. I'm impressed. Nice job, kid. As Izuku was congratulated by midnight and walked down to his fellow students, head held high and tears wiped away, they almost came back with force at the rare praise from his teacher. You hear that, sports fans? Izuku's speech even managed to melt Eraser's cold, mean heart. Mike replied. Why you dash? Eraser's mic was cut off swiftly, much to the amusement of the crowd and students of 1A. As Izuku walked up to his fellow students/competition, he was met with affirmative nods, approving smiles, claps, and even looks of respect from the other courses. Of course, as Izuku made his way to stand beside Ida and Momo, his gaze met with Bakugo's. Surprisingly enough, Bakugo didn't say anything, but his glare and frown told Izuku everything he needed. Bakugo then walked past him, brushing him off rudely, though, with the hype of his own cheers still fresh in his mind. Izuku didn't care. Well, without further ado, it's time to get started. Midnight proclaimed. This is where you begin feeling the pain. Just like that, Uraraka questioned. Guess they don't want to let us catch our breath or prepare for too long. Azui shrugged. Now to announce the first game of the festival. Midnight cracked her whip into the air as a holographic screen materialized behind her. On the screen, a rectangular bar appeared in the center, words and images appearing and disappearing like the roulette wheel in a casino. The students and crowd waited in silent anticipation. Finally, it stopped on an event colored in yellow, with a stick figure of a person and a Pokemon jumping over a hurdle. Partner obstacle course. Partner obstacle course? Serena questioned. All 11 classes will participate in this treacherous contest. Midnight announced, showing the 11 classes and course circling the stadium. They will run 4 kilometers around the outside of the stadium and back here. While I do not wish to restrain anybody in this event, there are a few rules to follow. The screen showed a stick figure with a random Pokemon. Every student must have one of their Pokemon out to run with them. Their placement in the running will only count once both trainer and Pokemon reach the finish. And think carefully on who to choose because you are forbidden from carrying your Pokemon. I see. Ida hummed, cupping his chin. Not only will we have to show off and use our own individual quirks to reach the end as fast as possible, but show the skills and speed of our Pokemon to show that they can keep up with us, especially when we become heroes chasing after villains. We also have to be cautious on which one to choose. Momo jumped in. We cannot bring out our lightest Pokemon to carry around, so the slower your team is, the more of a disadvantage you are in. There is still some ways to make this easy. Ojiro said, flying Pokemon that are large enough could carry you, and some Pokemon can teleport, so they can just warp you to the finish line easily. Achiko quickly thought to her Kirlia, who could easily teleport her to the finish line or make herself weightless, and have Minior float her weightless body to the finish. Despite his aversion to cheat the system, Ida likewise thought that flying on Skarmory would get him to the finish easily. Tokoyami thought the same with riding on Corviknight. Oh, almost forgot. You are also forbidden from riding your own Pokemon, and in addition, flying or teleporting to the finish line on your Pokemon is also prohibited. Same goes for Pokemon teleporting on their own to the finish and waiting. Midnight added, her grin devious as if she heard Ojiro. Off man. Kirishima sighed, his plans for riding on Rhyhorn going up in flames. Ojiro's sweat dropped, feeling like he ended up jinxing himself and his classmates. But as for you students, Midnight chuckled, licking her lips in mischievousness. As long as you stay on the course, you're free to use your quirks however you wish. Bakugo grinned maliciously. Todoroki's cold eyes narrowed. Shinso flashed a devious, toothy grin. Izuku nodded, eyes determined and ready. Now, choose which Pokemon you wish to race with quickly. Midnight cracked her whip towards the large doors right of her. You have 1 minute, and then take your positions. With a short time limit, the students immediately rushed towards the doors, hands racing down to their belts to pull out and summon their Pokemon. Uraraka was quick to bring out her Minior, Mini, while Ida decided on his Doduo and Momo onto Jetta. Many more of the students brought out their flying Pokemon, such as Mina and a Golbat, Kyuko with a Noivern, and Tokoyami with his Corviknight. While they couldn't fly on them, it would be better to have their fast, aviary Pokemon to race alongside them, in case of any booby traps that UA is sure to place along the track. Others with no such options resorted on their fastest land Pokemon. Such choices included Denki's Blitzel, Kirishima's new Rockruff, Todoroki and his Alola Ninetales, and Bakugo with Kalava. Meanwhile, Izuku was quickly working out his choices within his mind. If we are going based on pure speed, then I can't choose Eevee or Froakie, Izuku thought. While they're fast, Eevee can get tired easily with a long run like this, and can't use Quick Attack forever. And while Froakie would be very useful in case on any need to jump, he could lag behind me if I go full cowling. So that leaves Pikachu and Combusken. Izuku looked at the Pokeballs of Pikachu and Combusken in his hands. They are both extremely fast, and if it came down to showing pure power from an obstacle, Pikachu would definitely excel. But dash. Izuku looked over at Todoroki and his Ninetales, as they gazed at the door silently. I know Todoroki is going to try something right off the bat. He made that clear with his declaration of war. Izuku looked at the tall doors, yet narrow length. The doorway is likely narrow, so it would be a hassle to go through with so many people and their Pokemon. Izuku looked back at Todoroki, especially if the place is iced over. Izuku looked back down at his Pokeballs and nodded. Then the choice is clear. Izuku thought with finality. With the time over and the doors opening up to reveal its narrow pathway, all of the students stood gathered around before the doors, the front a large crowd of them, almost shoulder to shoulder with their Pokemon floating, standing, or crouched by their sides. The first of the 3 green lights turned off, counting down the start. This is it, Izuku thought, looking at the doors. Both he and Combuskin crouched in a running start. We have to be smart about this. With UA, no task is ever really simple. Izuku turned to Combuskin and smirked. Let's do this, Combuskin. Combuskin nodded, a fierce glint in her eyes. You can count of me, Izuku, she mentally said back. Let's do this. Izuku nodded and turned back to the path ahead. All Might, Mom. Izuku imagined All Might and his mother watching him on from the stands. I hope you guys are watching. The second light turned off. All Might's clasped hands tightened. Inko's hands clenched the end of her dress skirt. I'll make you too proud. Izuku's eyes flashed green with energy. The last light went out with a buzz. Begin. Midnight shouted. Immediately, the students and Pokemon booked it towards the doors as fast as possible. And we're off to a racing start. Mike announced. Any colorful commentary for us, Mummy Man? How did you talk me into this? Aizawa groaned again. What should we be paying attention to the early stages of the race? Mike continued, undeterred by his co-host's lack of enthusiasm. The doorway. Aizawa answered, simply. True to his words, the narrow doorway was full of crowded teens and Pokemon, all smashed together and complaining as they tried to push and nudge each other away. Mineta was being smashed and squished against multiple legs, their knees striking the sides of his head. Izuku scoffed and grunted as he tried shoving people off of him and Combuskin. Momo clicked her teeth in discomfort as he tried worming her way out, a comical tick mark on her head as she felt not-so-subtle elbows rubbing on her large breasts and the blushes on the guys beside her. She would have gave them a piece of her mind, likely with a metal bat to their perverted heads, but she shook those thoughts aside as she stared towards the bright end of the doorway. They're testing us already, Momo realized, trying to see how we get out of this debacle. Serena grunted, trying to worm her way across the crowd of students. Serena tried looking for Izuku, losing track of him in this mass of bodies. She blinked her eyes as she remembered Izuku's speech, his words to the class in the waiting room, and his gaze towards her as they went towards the doors to wait. I can't be focused on following Isaac, Serena thought, stealing her nerves. He told us to give it our all, and I will. He trusts me to my best, and I will trust him too. So this is the first obstacle? Todoroki muttered, cold mist forming around him. How fortuitous. Suddenly, a burst of cold air exploded out from the doorway, freezing the ground and the walls outside. In a sprint, Todoroki raced out the doorway, and in the lead, Ninetales running down with him, her movements unbothered by the ice. Apologies, Todoroki said as he continued running. Behind him, many of the students and Pokemon of the other courses were trapped, their feet stuck frozen to the ice, all except the flying types who merely slowed in discomfort at the cold air around them. Ugh, no fair. One student groaned as he tried to pry his feet off the ice. Oh, talk about playing dirty, or rather icy. Mike snickered at his pun. The students are stuck frozen on the track. Todoroki used the narrow surroundings to his advantage and froze his competition in their tracks with a single powerful wave of ice. Aizawa summarized for the cheering crowd. A well-thought and planned move that didn't affect his chosen Pokemon, too. And with that, Shoto Todoroki of Class 1A is off to an early start. Mike announced. Huh? But what's this? Todoroki looked back to the sounds of explosions and exertions. The Kogu flew over the track of ice, his explosions lifting him upwards. His Kalava likewise jumped over the field of ice with his trainer. He likewise saw Aoyama fire a naval laser, blasting him off into the air, while his Starmie floated over the ice. Yaoyorozo pole vaulting over from a pole she created out of her hands with her Togetic flying beside her, and the rest of Class 1A following. Nice trick, Todoroki. Momo yelled out. I won't let you get away so easily, you icy hot bastard. Bakugo roared out in rage, blasting towards Todoroki. Ojiro and Ambipom sprung up from the ground, passing over the wave of ice. I saw you do this in the battle training exercise. Don't think you can catch me off guard like that. Ojiro said, Tokoyami beside him springing up via Dark Shadow's shadowy claws. Nina jumped over the wave of ice, quickly firing her acid from the holes off her shoes, sliding down the ice, Golbat flying over her. Azuri jumped high over with Politoed. Kirishima jumped over and smashed his hardened fingers into the icy floor, cracking through. Yeah, Kirishima yelled as he began speed crawling with Rockruff beside him, his rocky paws easily cracking through the ice. Did you not learn from our braining training exercise, Todoroki? Serena chuckled, turning his ice into a watery slide for her to surf, her new Bisel surfing behind her. Your ice just makes things easier for me and my quirk. Gotta wait for the right time to show off my quirk, Uraraka declared, as she stomped carefully on the ice while Minnie just floated over. Behind her, among several of other students who escaped the freezing wave, Shinso was spotted behind, lifted up, and carried over the ice by a pair of students, all of whom looked dazed and white-eyed. Beside him, his Drowsy was being carried by other Pokemon via hypnosis. So, they are good at using their powers, huh? Shinso asked himself. BRR, talk about cold. Tokage shivered, now suddenly split into multiple pieces that were floating over the track. But don't count my class out yet. Behind her, a rumble occurred as her Gabite sprang out of the icy ground, called out its name before diving back down through the floor and into the earth, continuing to dig through the ground. I didn't expect for so many people to dodge my attack, Todoroki said, surprised, especially those from other classes. One for all, full cowling. Izuku sprang into the air, body alive with green bioelectricity. Combusken, jump and paved the way with flame charge. Combusken, the young foul Pokemon cried out, her body covered in fire, and jumped forward, landing and melting the area her feet landed quickly before jumping upwards and forwards, continuing the process. Just behind her, Izuku landed onto where she did and jumped again, following her. I knew Todoroki would pull something like that, Izuku thought as he analyzed the situation. With this icy floor, it would be hard for even those who dodged the first wave to advance quickly. I wouldn't be able to run fast with full cowling. Did he do that specifically to counter me? No. It doesn't matter in the end. It was a good thing I chose Combusken. Izuku looked to where Combusken landed before jumping off and landed, carefully placing his feet to where her talons did. With her flame charge, she could easily burn enough of the ice to make stepping stones for me to jump on, burning enough for my feet to land on. Izuku looked back to the rest of his competition, who tried to steady themselves on his stepping stones. I could have had her just blaze a trail simply by running, but this makes it harder for those behind me to follow me and Combusken's far jumps, spacing the stepping stones far enough for no regular person to copy. Looking forwards towards Todoroki and the rest of his class, Izuku thought, that's enough thinking, just do. Copying Izuku, Mineta ripped off the purple balls from his head, them being easily replaced by new ones quickly, and tossed them onto the icy floor. Mineta would jump and land on the balls before hopping and jumping off towards the next ones. You think you are so cool, but I've outsmarted you, Mineta declared while in midair, an incredibly determined and pleased grin on his face. How pathetic, Todoroki. Present mic, Minoru Mineta. Quirk, pop off. He can remove those purple balls off his head and toss them out, where they are replaced by new ones. They can stick onto any surface and trap those unfortunate enough to get caught in them, while he can bounce off them. Take too many out too quickly, and he'll start to bleed. So gross. Eat this. My special attack. Mineta roared out, taking out another purple ball and aiming it towards Todoroki below him. Grape dash. Mineta was cut off and smacked in the air by a large robotic arm. Mineta wailed as he flew and rolled away. Are you okay? Izuku asked, worried. He looked to what did that, his eyes widening in surprise. Target acquired. A UA robot declared in a robotic voice. Objective: terminate. It's those robots from the entrance exam. Izuku frowned. Standing in the student's way were a cluster of entrance exam robots of varying size and shape, with the ones at the very back being the colossal, Groudon-looking zero-pointer, now joined by a whole pack of zero-pointers. Oh! Enemies have shown up out of nowhere. Mike declared excited. We are in for a treat, folks. A test of strength and cunning. It's a Robo-Armageddon. Kaminari slid to a stop, gazing up at the large robots in terror. Whoa, wait. Are those the zero-pointers from the practical test? Kaminari questioned loudly. Many of the other course students likewise gazed up and gawked in terror of the behemoth-sized robots, pondering out loud how the hero course students managed against them. This is what Izu and the others had to deal with. Serena asked, she and Beisel wide-eyed in shock. So, this is what the other students faced in their entrance exam. Todoroki said, taking a readied stance. Where does the school even get the funding for this stuff? Yaoyorozu asked. Mizu, up in the teacher's stands, raised a pawed finger up to his grinning mouth. Inko, Mitsuki, and Masaru looked at the screen showing the event along with the rest of the crowd. Huh. I guess that Brat wasn't bragging about those things being colossal. Mitsuki simply said, wide-eyed surprised. Izuku. Inko muttered, worried for her son. As the zero-pointers lumbered towards him, Todoroki crouched down, ice spreading around him rapidly. They must have gone through a lot of trouble making these, but I expected for them to give me a bit more of a challenge. Todoroki muttered. The zero-pointer's clawed hand reached down to him as ice spread more and more. Todoroki looked up with a fiercely determined glare in his cold eyes. Especially since my dear old dad is watching. With a strong wave of his right hand forwards, a large blast wave of ice and cold shot out and completely froze the lumbering zero-pointer dead in its tracks. Todoroki simply breathed in deeply and exhaled, letting out a breath of cold air. Amazing! Mike roared out in conjecture with the roars of the crowd. With a simple swipe of his hand, one of the zero-pointers that gave our hero course students such trouble in the entrance exam has been frozen completely by Todoroki. Such power. All might gasp, still in impressed awe at the power and control of a first-year student. Whoa. Now that was some power. Mirio, back in the stands, declared, flexing his arms. SS so sea cold. Amajiki shivered. Oh, come on, Tamaki. You can't even feel the cold from here. Nijire chided her shy companion. Getting up from his crouched stance, Todoroki and Ninetales took off between the frozen robot's legs. Look, he stopped the robot. One student yelled out, through the cold mist. Look, between its legs. We can get through. Another student shouted. Careful now. I froze it when it was off its balance. Todoroki called out as he finished passing under the frozen robot, its ice cracking and breaking apart. On purpose. The once fully frozen robot lowered and fell down behind Todoroki and Ninetales as they continued running. And, with that, Todoroki of Class 1A goes back to an early lead. Mike continued announcing. Amazing! He's one we should watch. It almost seems unfair. Thoughts? His attack was both offensive and defensive. Aizawa stated. No wonder. He was let in on recommendations. Mike announced loudly. He never even fought those Robo-Infernos, but they were no match him. But now let's see how the rest of the contestants fare against these robot menaces. Wait, what about those guys that were under it when it fell? One of the students asked, suddenly worried. Are people actually going to die here? Another student freaked out. Suddenly, the armor of the giant mechanical Groudon cracked and protruded. Finally, bursting free with a roar was a hardened Kirishima, along with his Rockruff, yelling, "We're alive!" And it's Kirishima from Class 1A. What a hardcore showing from his young rookie. Mike proclaimed. Jesus, Todoroki, didn't think you'd do something so underhanded like that. Kirishima groaned as he shook his head. Anybody but me could have been killed. You could have squashed Rockruff. Kirishima rubbed his Pokemon, said Rockruff, enjoying the attention, checking to see if it was okay. Present Mike. Ajiro Kirishima. Quirk. Hardening. His quirk turns his body as rock hard as a Rhyperior's plating, making him the ultimate shield or a devastating weapon. The chassis of the robot once more bulged and cracked again, to Kirishima's left, to his surprise. Geez, other than that manly Midoriya fellow, Class 1A is full of jerks. Bursting free from the robot, Tetsu from Class 1B came out. By his side, a bronzer floating out with him. When I get my hands on him, I'll smash that ice guy. Who? It's Tetsu from Class 1B, who is also stuck underneath. What are the odds? Mike rhetorically asked. Letting out a puff and petting his bronzer, Tetsu muttered, "You know, anybody but me could have been killed, and he could have squished bronzer if I wasn't there." Present Mike. Tetsu. Quirk. Steel. His quirk turns his body as shiny and hard as an Agron's plating, making him the ultimate shield or a devastating weapon. Whoa, deja vu. Ugh, our quirks are pretty much the same. Kirishima groaned in dismay. Now how am I supposed to stand out? You copycat. Even our quirk descriptions were pretty much the same. Tetsu whined, breaking the fourth wall, much like he broke through the robot. Man, those two are lucky to have such strong quirks. Kaminari muttered. They don't have to worry about not being crushed. Just as some of the students were getting over their surprise, some even mentioning of working together to fight the robots, they were quickly interrupted by the sounds of explosions. They looked in time to see Bakugo flying his way into the air and towards the zero-pointer. No way am I letting that icy, hot bastard beat me. Bakugo growled, flying over the zero-pointer's claw and landing on its shoulder. Class 1A's Katsuki Bakugo is flying over the obstacles. Clever, Mike announced, as talented as ever. Mitsuki, in the stands, let out an annoyed groan, much to Inko's sweat-dropped expression. Please, honey, be a little more supportive of our son? Masaru insisted. This is me supporting him, you lovable idiot, Mitsuki yelled in retort. Bakugo peeked down to see Kalava following his lead, zipping and speeding past the other robots with quick attack, as expected. Bakugo let out a rare satisfied smirk, before noticing he wasn't the only one soaring over the zero-pointer. I figured you would have tried to one-up Todoroki and blast one or two zero-pointers with your quirk. Zero called out, swinging upwards into the air by swinging up the zero-pointer with his tape. Swinging right next to him, using string shot, was Zero's Levany. Can't lie and say I'm not impressed. Present Mike. Hand to Zero. Quirk. Tape. He can shoot out tape-like material from his weird elbows and stick onto objects or wraps things up. His traps with his quirk can make an Ariados quiver in shame. Following closely behind was Tokoyami and his Corviknight, the former being lifted and swung upwards via Dark Shadow and its claws, while the latter simply flew on up. If I can't hitch a ride on Corviknight, I'll hitch a ride on my Shadow, Tokoyami declared. Let's land, Dark Shadow. Aye. The shadowy bird-looking quirk cried out, extending its shadowy arms forward. Present Mike. Fumigage Tokoyami. Quirk. Dark Shadow. He's got some shadow-like monster inside him that can materialize and morph into whatever creation he wants. As the three zipped down behind the robot to continue the race, Izuku grinned. Bakugo, Zero, and Tokoyami got the right of it. Izuku thought, looking at the zero-pointers. We don't need to destroy the zero-pointers. We just have to get by as fast possible. But Dash, Izuku looked at the smaller robot enemies in his way and flashed a wide grin. Showboating with these wouldn't hurt too much, right All Might? Sparking with full cowling, Izuku yelled, "Let's go, Combuskin." You got it, the Pokemon replied, already knowing what her trainer had in mind. Quickly, the two shot forwards towards the robots. Up in the teacher's stands, they watched the event through the monitors. Looks like all the leaders are from Class 1A. Snipe mentioned. At least for now. Yeah, but it's not like 1B, and the other students are doing poorly. All Might said, grinning proudly. It's just that Dash. Class 1, A's learn not to hesitate. Aizawa, unknowingly, finished All Might's sentence. Ida and Dajuo ran at high speeds forwards. Ida hopped and planted his right foot onto one of the smaller robots. With a push, the robot fell to the ground while Ida somersaulted off. Dajuo jumped from another robot's jab, landing one of its talons on the back of its robot head and vaulting. Jaira stuck her jacks onto the sides of two robots, unleashing her heartbeat and running past the malfunctioning, collapsing robots with a smirk. Her Noibat evaded and swerved from the non-lethal missiles of the robots, unleashing a supersonic attack that caused the firing robots to sputter and twitch. Kaminari hopped over a robot's punch, landing on it and unleashing his quirk on it. The robot electrocuted to destruction. His Blitzel ran up and fired a blast of electricity into the slowly dunce-turning team, now recharged and ready to run again. They've seen what the real world is like. Aizawa continued. They felt the fear of facing villains, yet they fight on, trying to overcome that fear. Ashui jumped up onto and crawled and hopped quickly over a zero-pointer with her Polytoad. Uraraka and Minnie ran and floated down the track, Uraraka looking behind her and pressing her fingertips together, just as two robots fell down to the ground. Their gravity returned. Ojiro and Ambipom flung their tails onto two robots, smashing them to pieces easily. Using the ice from Todoroki's attack, Serena formed the ice into two water whips. She launched them forwards, slashing through their metal hides easily, her Bizel knocking one from behind her with a sonic boom. They've grown, all of them. Aizawa continued, and they know that they have to act quickly in order to survive. Detroit Smash. Izuku yelled, smashing his full howling fist into the head of Robot, tearing through it easily. The green-haired teen wasted no second and sped forwards, tearing through more and more robots that came his way with punches, kicks, and even fling them away like they were ragdolls. Combuskin followed her trainer, blitzing through the robots with Flame Charge, or breaking through with Double Kick and Shadow Claw. Last time I faced these things, I only mastered one for all to 4%, and I barely got in thanks to those rescue points. Izuku thought back to the entrance exam, and the 26 points he managed to score off the robots he destroyed. But now, I've doubled my progress. Izuku remembered his training and progress since then, fighting Bakugu, fighting villains, saving Satsuki from Wishiwashi. Tearing through two more robots, Izuku smiled wide. These robots aren't that tough at all. Gaining an idea, Izuku grabbed the arm of the last robot in his path. Combuskin. Izuku yelled over to his Pokemon. Right, she replied, getting the message. With his enhanced strength, Izuku swung the zero-pointer around before swinging it forwards in time for Combuskin to tear through its arm, leaving Deku to hold the limb. With a metallic tear, Izuku pulled off the plating of the arm, quickly wrapping the loose wire around his torso and carrying the metal plate on his back like it was nothing. I don't know what else they might throw at us, but can't be too careful, Izuku thought as he and Combuskin raced on. Hearing explosions, Deku saw a few of the zero-pointers, their heads smoking, collapsing to the ground. Looking back, Izuku saw that it came from Momo, a literal cannon, formed out of her exposed stomach, the cause of the attack. She noticed Deku staring and gave a thumbs up. Izuku smiled and gave one back before rushing forward. Izuku and Combuskin zipped and weaved through the zero-pointers, jumping onto the swiping arm of another. Racing and jumping up toward the head, Izuku smirked, getting a reckless idea. Oh, what the heck? Combuskin. Izuku called out. Like you read my mind. Combuskin cried out. The two jumped high into the air, near the face of the robot Groudon's face. Izuku grabbed Combuskin's arm and swung, pivoting and twirling his body in midair, till the two looked like a spinning top. With a toss, Izuku called out spinning double kick. The flung Combuskin soared towards the zero-pointer, sticking its glowing white feet out towards the robot, and spinning again, this time vertically. Instantly, the young foul Pokemon tore through the Groudon's metallic eye and out the back of its head. Detroit Smash. Izuku yelled as he soared forwards, striking his fist out, as he likewise blasted through the other side of the robot Groudon's head, all the while smiling like his idol. And that was everyone's favorite speaker, Izuku Midoriya, tearing through robots, small and tall, like they were nothing. Mike exclaimed to the cheering roar of the crowd, "My baby!" Inko cried out, waterfall tears already blasting from her eyes. "Whoa, you weren't kidding when you said Izuku manifested a quirk." Mitsuki gazed in awe at the once quirkless boy now tearing apart robots like they were made of paper. What was his quirk again? As if hearing her, Mike asked, just what quirk is that? By Midoriya's words, it's called Aura Force. Aizawa answered, looking through one of the notebooks that Izuku handed to him before the festival, in case he needed to explain his and his classmates' quirks more. Allows him to tap into his own life force energy, known as Aura, to greatly enhance his strength and speed to superhuman levels. And he has shown even greater control and use safely than before. Nijire's eyes blinked and widened in shock. Aura Force? She muttered loudly, earning looks of confusion by Mirio and Tamaki. Pardon? Mike did a double take on what Aizawa said. Like Midoriya said in his speech, his quirk manifested later than everyone else, only manifesting a few months ago. Aizawa explained, he can channel that energy of his safely in lower percentages, since his body isn't fully accustomed to his own quirk's full power, resulting in him breaking his limbs. At its strongest, he could destroy a zero-pointer completely in one punch. This time, he has shown greater control, analysis, and teamwork with his Pokemon. Impressive. You heard that, folks. Class 1A's very own class rep, Izuku Midoriya, was going easy on those robots. Mike announced dramatically, if his speech from before wasn't enough, he is definitely one up-and-coming star you will want to keep your eyes peeled on. All Might Proud's smiler grew wider at the affirmative roar and cheer of the crowd. Aura Force. Aura Force. Aura. Nijire muttered, seemingly lost in her own world and thoughts. Nijire. Mirio said her name slowly as he waved his hand over her eyes, the periwinkle-haired girl not noticing or caring. Well, she's gone to La La Land, Tamaki. I feel sorry for that kid when Nijire gets her hands on him. Tamaki shuddered in fear. You and me both. Mirio nodded, affirmative, his eyes going back to the screen and watching more of this Izuku Midoriya that Sir Nightai wanted him to see. You don't have to take out those giant robots to get through, but taking them down does make for greater chance to show your skills. Snipes said to the teachers, and despite their size, they are just slow-moving hunks of metal, easy to break through if you know where to hit. All Might stared at Izuku blasting through the zero-pointer with that smile, almost like seeing a young version of himself. Suddenly, All Might was filled a wave of guilt. I've asked so much of you, young Midoriya. All Might thought to his talk with Midoriya 2 weeks ago. You don't have to come in first, just get to the next round and you'll be fine. And with that, it seems like most of the contestants have reached the second obstacle. Mike announced, and if you thought the first one was tough, let's see how these students handle the fall. Uraraka, Mina, and Azui gaped in shock at the fall. It was a large and wide canyon, the wide and dark abyss full of tall, rising pillars of rock with flat platforms, each one of varying size, width, and length apart. An intricate web of wires connected many of the rock pillars to others nearby. When did they have time to build something like this? Uraraka questioned. Was it thanks to Mr. Cementos? Mina asked. Instead of asking questions, Azui simply jumped up, landing on one wire with her hands and feet, and beginning to crawl forwards on the wire. This is it, my moment to shine. Azui croaked. Come on, Politoad. Polly, the frog Pokemon croaked, following its trainer's lead. Whoa, she's fast, Mina said, impressed. The two girls were drawn to the almost mad cackle coming from behind them. Yes, this is my chance to show off what I can do, the voice said. My support items are going to steal the spotlight from these wannabe heroes. Looking behind them, the two pink-themed girls met another pink-haired girl. Her pink hair was styled in thick dreadlocks reached down to her shoulders, her eyes hidden behind a large, weird set of goggles and headwear. All they could see of her face was her wide, grinning smile. A harness of sorts was fitted over her UA uniform, a metal band strapped across her waist just below her large breasts, two protruding harnesses on either side, and a metal pack on her back, with a red tool belt around her hips. Her feet were also covered by large white, mechanical boots strapped to her legs, boosters on the bottom of her heels. Floating by her side was Porygon. "Everyone, observe what my brilliant gadgets can do," the pink-haired girl declared, spreading her arms out wide. "My fire arrows and hammer saws." "Wait, you're from the support course, aren't you?" Uraraka asked the girl. "Hey, how come you got to bring all that stuff?" Mina accused the support course student. "Students in the hero course get all kinds of combat training to hone their quirks, so to give us a fighting chance and keep things fair, we are allowed to bring whatever gadgets and costumes into the game that we, ourselves, make," the girl answered. "So sit back and enjoy the show." Just as she finished, one of her harpoons fired off, opening up and latching onto a far-off pillar. For those of us in the support course, this is the perfect time for us to show off our gadgets to any support companies so they can recruit us. The girl was lifted off the ground via the thrusters on her boots, releasing bursts of air. "Hope you all are watching me, support companies. Let me show you all what my babies can do." With that, May blasted forwards, falling into the dark abyss. As she fell enough, May pressed a button of a device in her hand. The pulley system in her pack switched gears and began to pull her up from the harpoon on the pillar. She landed on said pillar, her hammer saws blasting her forward. She launched off the pillar and into the air, arms spread wide, and cackling with mad glee before landing on one pillar and continuing. As her Porygon followed her silently, Mina groaned, "Man, talk about annoying. Don't just sit there stunned, girls." Serena's voice called out from behind them. They turned to watch the strawberry blonde-haired girl race past them towards the fall. "This isn't the time to gawk. Izu and the others are already ahead of us." Serena ran up to a particular wire, covered in ice, evidence of Todoroki using it to slide across. Hopping onto the icy wire, she immediately turned it to wire and began surfing up the wire. Taking notice of what Serena said, Uraraka looked further on in the canyon of pillars to see Todoroki, Bakugo, Izuku, and the others far ahead. Todoroki was seen sliding across the wires, turning them into ice for him to slide on. Bakugo was flying over the canyon with his explosions. Sero and Tokoyami swung from pillar to pillar with their quirks, and Kirishima and Tetsu were balancing on the wire. Uraraka focused towards Izuku, highlighted by his green bioelectricity. She watched as he leaped from one pillar over another, jumping on the far closer pillars than risking the larger gaped ones. Combuskin was in fact ahead of him, her body cloaked in a white trail of aerial lace as she jumped and soared from one platform to another easily. Seeing their determination, especially Dekko's, Uraraka steeled her nerves. "I won't lose," she proclaimed, going up and balancing on the same wire Azui took. "Go on and float on over, Minnie. I'll catch up." Minnie nodded and floated over the canyon towards the other side. "Ugh, this is so unfair. Fongy, you fly over too." Mina whined and said to her Galbit, Fongy, who took to the skies. Mina jumped over onto another wire, using her quirk to slide across easily. "Interesting," Shinso said, watching more and more students go on ahead, with a devious grin on his face. In the world of heroes, it can be hard to become popular without a flashy enough quirk, Mike announced, turning towards Aizawa. "Right, Eraserhead?" A comical tick mark appeared over the mummy that was Aizawa. "I don't know what you're talking about, idiot." The one, a teacher growled, annoyed. "Hee hee, anyways, looks like Todoroki is still skating on past the obstacles easily." Mike continued announcing the event, monitors showing Todoroki skating across the wires via his ice. Todoroki looked behind him to see Ninetales struggling, yet catching up to her trainer, jumping onto even smaller, more jumbled-together platforms that were surely made for more land-based Pokemon to cross. "I can't slow down now for her," Todoroki thought. "I'll have to leave that to her to catch up." "Ooh, but look here. It seems that Katsuki Bakugo is catching up to Todoroki," Shoto heard Mike said. True to his words, Todoroki peeked behind him to see the explosive teen flying towards him. gaining on him. So, he's finally gotten serious, huh? He asked to himself. You suck. Bakugo roared out as he rushed forward. Ida slowed to a stop over the fall. He looked towards his Dojuo and nodded, wordlessly telling the Pokemon to go on ahead. Dojuo nodded, taking a few steps back before dashing into a jump, soaring high in the air, landing on a platform, and before jumping towards the next. Emboldened further by his Pokemon, Ida breathed in deeply. My older brother is probably watching me on. Ida's eyes widened with pure passion and rushed forward, spreading his arms out to his side. I can't let him see me look foolish. I got this. What resulted was Ida in a funny cross-like pose, his right foot crossed to the side and the other behind, firing up the engines in his legs, his body wiggling as he struggled to balance himself on the wire. Boy, does he look foolish, Mike declared, Ida's resolve in vain. Wow, the other students are catching up, but the guy in the lead's still pretty far ahead. A man in the crowd said as they watched Todoroki on the monitors. His quirk is really powerful, but it is his natural, athletic talent and keen judgment keeping him in first place. The man beside him, who had a third eye on his forehead, replied, Well, I'm not surprised. The third guy next to them said, Don't you guys know who his dad is? The flame hero, Endeavor. Wait for real. The first guy exclaimed in surprise and awe. That guy is second only to All Might himself. Agencies will be tearing each other apart to have him as a sidekick. The second guy nodded. As they talked, a man watched the event from the back. He was tall, practically as tall as All Might in his buff form, with short red hair and wearing a blue costume that showed his large, muscular physique. What stood out about this man's outfit was the lines of red-hot magma-like fire that streamed intricately around his costume, and, of course, the bright, wild flames that sprouted from his shoulders and his upper face, giving him a fiery mask over his eyes and forehead. Endeavor watched his son run with an angry, almost disappointed frown. Back to the race. Todoroki slid to a halt, pausing as he looked at what was in front of him. And now we pull up to the last obstacle of the race. Mick's voice projected over the speakers above two large white signs with the bright yellow words Danger Mines, highlighted by black and red explosion drawings, a large red skull plastered over in the middle. Past the signs, the large rectangular field was mostly flat, save for the dozens and dozens of particular darker circles of dirt. Everybody better tread carefully. You're stepping onto a minefield. If you look very carefully, you will see where those little explosives are buried. So keep your eyes on the ground, folks. Mike warned. Oh, and before we get some complaints about excessiveness, those landmines were designed for the games, so they may be loud, flashy, and can knock you on your ass, but they really aren't all that powerful. Just enough for you to wet your pants as you sail through the sky. Get a hold of yourself. Aizawa tried bringing his co-host back down to Earth. Shit, Todoroki's probably the one who's made it there. Izuku cursed, inwardly. He and Combuskin speeding up. Gotta go faster. As he and many of the other students made it to the last obstacle, an unfortunate soul stepped onto one of the mines. The mine exploded in a bright, yet light explosion, yet still sent the student flying off. Clever. Todoroki groaned, yet admitted, as more and more students fell victim to the mines and flew off. With this, it puts those who are in the lead at a disadvantage so the others could keep up. Suddenly, the sound of explosions grew louder, Todoroki looking back to see Bakugo right behind him, flying over the mines with his explosions, flashing a victorious grin. Ha, it's over, you half and half bastard. And with that declaration, Bakugo blasted right past Todoroki. Your declaration of war was to the wrong person. Bakugo struck his arm out towards Todoroki with an explosion, Todoroki barely sidestepping away. And with that, Katsuki Bakugo finally takes the lead. Mike yelled as the fans roared in cheers. The crowd is going crazy. There's nothing they like more than an upset. Todoroki continued dodging Bakugo explosions, trying to continue forwards while being careful not to land on a mine. Crap, his quirk is making him float over the mines, and I can't use my ice without risking setting off some mines on accident. Todoroki thought over his options, already tossing aside the other option that popped up in the back of his head. I got to knock him to the mines. Todoroki finally looked back to see Ninetales was gaining on them, running past the mines with speed and grace. Ninetales, blast him away. Moonblast. Ninetales complied, raising her mouth and forming an orb of glowing pink energy and launched it at Bikugu. The explosive blonde easily noticed and launched himself backwards by firing explosions from his forward-facing palms. He managed to dodge as the fairy-type move sailed between him and Todoroki. Bikugu quickly struck his hand back and let out smaller, multiple explosions to keep himself aloft and not set off a mine. Bikuga scoffed and, before growling out, "Kalava, deal with that stupid fancy shit with flamethrower." On cue, Kalava, pulling up to Ninetales, fire a stream of fire from his mouth. Ninetales managed to jump away and steer away from the flames, with the two now clashing similarly to their trainers. Hey, the rest of the competitors are catching up, too, Mike revealed. Ida and Dajuo tried running past the mine at full sprint, explosions setting off behind them. They tried to outrun the explosions they set off, only for them to set off a few in front and next to them, blasting them with multiple explosions. The vine-haired girl was beginning to catch up, her vine hair, as well as her Tangela's tentacles stretching out into the ground to sense and maneuver away from the mines. The pale teen with a skull-looking face was catching up as well, his feet almost gliding across the ground and over the mines, like it was liquid. Meanwhile, below him, his Dugtrio dug its way underneath the field of explosions and the mines. Its journey was not alone, as it was digging alongside a Gabite, her trainer above floating over the mines with her multiple floating body parts. Ooh, and what's this? Can our two leaders fight each other off and stay in the lead? Mike continued as Bikugu, Todoroki, and their Pokémon clashed carefully against each other, Todoroki backing Bikuga's exploding palms away from his face and grabbing Bikuga's forearm. The blonde quickly smacked the white and red-haired teen's hand away, with only his forearm now encased in ice. Meanwhile, in the back, Izuku cursed under his breath, his position among the front falling to almost the back of the middle pack. Izuku couldn't move as fast as Ida to avoid the bombs, or have the sensory capabilities like that vine-haired girl overfly over the obstacles like the moss-green-haired girl, or Bikugu, leaving Izuku and Combuskin to carefully trudge through the mines. They considered jumping only for a second before another student tried, and showed why that wasn't a good idea. Crap, I'm getting overtaken, and I don't know how many will qualify for the next round. Izuku thought, panicking. I gotta think of something. Think. Izuku looked to see Bikugu and Todoroki clashing, Bikugu attempting to fire an explosion at Todoroki. He then saw Ida and Dajuo get blasted by multiple explosions around them, the blue-haired teen's ingenuity and quick wit keeping him from flying off into the depths. The gear in Izuku's brain clicked with an idea. Risky, probably would backfire on him if he didn't angle it right, but he had no other choice. Combuskin, follow me lead, Izuku said to his fire-type Pokemon. With an affirmative nod, Izuku grabbed the plating the UA robot, strapped his back, out and into the dirt. Gotta be careful. They only go off if you step on them, Izuku said as he dug up a mine, carefully pushed it to another one. They may not be powerful, but if you set off a whole bunch of them, like Ida did, then they become a greater pain and make larger explosions. Combuskin carefully dug up another bomb with her claws and copied Izuku. I can't jump over them. Even Ajui's not jumping because of how risky it is to land. Izuku peeked over to see Ajui and Politoed carefully crawling on the ground, as well as seeing Kirishima and Tetsu clash, Mineta jumping towards Momo with his balls out. Not like that, you perverts. And the others carefully and slowly walking. But I can't go slow, or I'll be stuck in the back of the pack with no way of knowing if I make it in. There are a lot of explosions at the end, more than back here, but everyone was careful at the start, so there are plenty of them still left to gather. Izuku thought as he continued, but I gotta be careful how I do this, or I'll be blown the opposite direction or worse. While her Noibat was flying over the field and, upon her instruction, heading towards the finish line, Kyuko walked carefully around the mines, using her jacks to sense where the bombs were. Hearing the sounds of shuffling dirt and shoveling, She looked behind to see Izuku and Combuskin digging up a cluster of dirt in front of them. "What's Midoriya doing?" Hyuga muttered, perplexed by what her green-haired class rep was doing. Her ever-growing desire to find out more about Midoriya and why the girls were so interested in him surfaced back up again. However, shaking her head, reminding herself of the task at hand, Hyuga turned away and continued through the minefield. As Mike continued announcing something about multiple flying Pokemon of the students already making it to the finish line and waiting for their trainers, Izuku said there, "Done." In front of him and Combuskin was a decent pile of dug-up landmines, gathered together, some noticeably angled towards the finish line. "Are you sure I can't convince you to not try this stupid, risky move?" Combuskin pleaded. "Nope," Izuku replied. "All right, just checking before we're blown to bits." Combuskin sighed. Izuku raised his makeshift shield up in front of him, strapping the wire of the plate around his hand. Combuskin got beside him, wrapped another wire around her paw. "Ready, if I have to," Combuskin replied. "Yep," Eevee replied in his mind. "Indeed." Froakie croaked. "Fine." Pikachu groaned. "But if you drop me, I swear I'll zap you into charcoal." "Here we go. Thanks for the idea." Izuku and Combuskin, shield up and in their hand/paw, ran up and jumped towards the mines. Super turbo speed. Upon landing, the back of the field was engulfed in a massive explosion, blasting a few unfortunate to be around to fly away. "What the?" Mike exclaimed in shock, his shock mirrored by the students on the field, bracing themselves from the light and wind from the explosive force. What was that huge explosion in the back? Ida braced himself against the light and wind, alongside the vine-haired girl and Tokoyami, his dark shadow hiding behind him with a teary, pained expression. That was way more powerful than it should have been. Serena and Uraraka squinted against the light of the explosion, but as it died down, they noticed and looked at a figure blasting out of the pink mist of the explosion. With shocked eyes, the two and all the rest saw Izuku and Combuskin soaring through the sky at blistering speeds, riding on their shield. "Incredible," Mike roared out with the crowd. "Yes, all might," too roared, fists raised into the air with relieved elation. "What just happened?" Mike roared out his question. Azui, Nina, and Hagakure looked up with shocked expressions. Hyuga's recovered from her stumble from the explosion to see Midoriya the culprit and flying. Serena and Uraraka's shock quickly turned to awe and joy. Kirishima and Tetsu stopped their fighting to see the green-haired teen fly. "Midoriya?" Ida questioned as Midoriya flew past him. Tokage looked above her to see Izuku on a shield soaring just above her as she floated in sky. Tokage managed to look at Izuku's face as he sailed past her, eyes ablaze, like during his speech, and a wide grin on his face that would make All Might jealous. The world felt like it was crawling at a slowpoke's pace. Her widened eyes held a sparkle in them, her heart skipping a beat, her stomach churning like a pair of butterflies were swarming in her. Whatever just happened back there, Todoroki and Bakugo stopped their clash as they saw Izuku and Combuskin blast towards them. Class 1 AS Izuku Midoriya is rocketing in hot pursuit of first place. Izuku and Combuskin sailed over the two. Correction, the lead is his. The crowd roared in cheers, practically losing their minds. While Mitsuki laughed like a maniac, Inko cupped her hands over her quivering, smiling mouth. "Izuku." She whimpered in pride and joy. "This is awesome." Eevee screamed, laughing in fun, as he and the rest could feel the speed in their pokeballs. "Ugh, I'm going to be sick. I'm going to be sick." Pikachu gagged at the turbulence while inside his death trap of a pokeball. "Is this all part of the plan?" Combuskin roared out loudly through the wind. "Mostly," Izuku replied through his mind. "I tried to pile more for both our weights, but there was more force than I expected. And dash. And what?" Combuskin pestered for an answer. "I didn't think about how we were going to land." Izuku answered. "What?" Combuskin and Pikachu both yelled. DQ. Deku could hear Bakugo roaring behind him, even with the wind in his ears. Bakugo blasted into the sky and shot out towards him, with clear fury in his eyes. What the hell do you think you are doing? Todoroki stomped his foot and formed a long path of ice in front of him. This ice path will end up helping others, but there's no time to worry about that. Todoroki rationalized as he, Ninetales, and Kalava all ran quickly to catch up. What a plot twist. Those two aren't fighting anymore. Mike roared out. They're chasing Midoriya. A common enemy can make the bitterest of rivals set aside their differences to face as one. Aizawa sagely commented, "This race is far from over. Anything can happen now." All Might clenched his fists, sweat pouring down his brow. Oh no, we're losing speed. Izuku noticed their slowing momentum, Bakugo and Todoroki right on him. Think fast. Gotta plan this out or I'll lose the lead. Combuskin, on my signal, jump in front of the plate with all your strength. Izuku commanded in his mind. Before the confused Combuskin could reply, Izuku continued, "Don't question me. Just trust me." Combuskin was silenced and nodded. Just as their descent was matched with Todoroki and Bakugo, Izuku pulled the shield upwards a bit and screamed out, "Now." Combuskin's legs almost bulged with how much she leapt forwards, clearing the minefield. Izuku's body spun in the air at Combuskin's jump, as well as his shield. As Todoroki and Bakugo were side to side with him, Izuku's body was upright in the air, hand clutched tightly on the wire of the shield. No time to worry. No time to hold back. Green lightning sparked around him, his eyes ablaze with green and blue energy. Show the world who you are. Izuku swung the shield with all his might onto the ground in front of him, onto the mines below. A powerful explosion blasted out, sending the two rivals and their Pokémon back as it launched Midoriya forwards. Landing with a rough, but manageable roll, Izuku got up to his feet as Combuskin landed in front of him. The two's eyes opened with fierce, fiery passion. No holding back. The two roared in their minds. Fusion move, Fiery Comet. Combuskin roared, activating Aerial Ace and Flame Charge, her body ablaze with fire, her black silhouette and ablaze yellow eyes, making her look like a demon. Break the limits. One for all. Full Cowling. 8%. Trainer and Pokémon both blasted forwards in an instant. True to its move's name, Combuskin soared forwards like a burning comet. Meanwhile, Izuku's rocketed forwards like a jolt of lightning, leaving Bakugo and Todoroki in the dust. I don't believe it, and just like that, Izuku Midoriya rocketed past his classmates into first place. Mike roared out, DQ. Bakugo roared, blasting out of the smoke of the landmine's explosion and towards his former punching bag. Kalava followed his trainer closely behind, activating Quick Attack to keep up. Todoroki and Ninetales shot out of the smoke as well, the two sliding of Todoroki's ice, with Ninetales unleashing her icy wind as a propulsion. Todoroki and Bakugo are still in it, trying to catch up to Midoriya. Mike continued announcing, yet Midoriya and his Combuskin seem almost faster than before. What's up with that? It's obvious, you idiot. Aizawa replied, looking at the problem child of his class. It's clear that throughout the race, Midoriya has been using a lower percentage of his quirk rather than using all he could muster safely. He used his quirk to keep a fair degree of speed to keep up with his classmates, only reserving his full available speed for the final stretch of the race, keeping his strength until he needed it. Your students are amazing. Just what have you been teaching them? Mike asked for the audience, who thought similarly. This has nothing to do with me. Aizawa responded, looking at Midoriya, Todoroki, and Bakugo. Each of them is powered by their own drive to succeed. You heard it, folks. The Eraserhead has admitted to being a terrible teacher. What? Quickly catching up, all three ran as fast they could, reaching into the doorway and running towards the light at the end. I won't lose. I won't lose. I won't lose to Deku again, was all Bakugo could think, releasing greater explosions to propel him faster. I already lost to that loser, Eevee. I won't lose to a more pathetic second stage fire starter. Kalava thought, picking up the pace with Quick Attack. More speed. More. Help Shoto reach his goal, no matter what. Ninetales exclaimed in her thoughts, blasting out more icy wind from her mouth. I won't lose. Not to him again. I'm going to surpass him, and all might. Todoroki roared in his mind, pushing more ice to slide on. Go beyond. Combuskin roared, blasting forwards with a cry. Plus ultra. Deku yelled, white sunlight blasting his eyes. And the first to make it back to the stadium is Red Shoes and Fiery Talons slid to a halt. Izuku Midoriya. Izuku and Combuskin were met with confetti and the screams of the crowd. Izuku, my baby. Inko cried out waterfalls for tears. Mitsuki hugged her best friend, regardless of getting soaked by Inko's tears. Whew, that was awesome. Mirio clapped and cheered excitedly with the crowd. Indeed, it was cool. Tamaki nodded and smiled, clapping more calmly and respectfully. Nijire looked upon the green-haired teen as he stood among the cheers of the entire world, how the lightning sparked off his body and how his already storming aura seemed ablaze and roaring. She smiled wide enough. She almost broke her face. Outside the stadium, Death Arms, Kamui Woods, and Mount Lady were standing guard by a gate for authorized personnel only. Well, more like Death Arms and Kamui Woods stood guard, and Mount Lady was busy posing for the cameras of overeager fans and photographers. Death Arms looked behind him to see the large monitor over the entrance. Blinking in recognition, Death Arms spoke up, "Hey look, it's that kid." Kamui turned as well, seeing Izuku crossing the finish line and standing triumphant as the winner. "Oh yeah," Kamui said, recognizing the kid. "He fought that sludge monster a year ago." Vaguely overhearing the two, Mount Lady turned to the screen mid-pose. She looked at his rather lean, yet muscular build, his messy emerald hair flowing in the wind. Huh, he looks cute. Mount Lady thought, where have I seen him before? Mr. Mime jumped and clapped for joy, ecstatically. The Azui family jumped from their seats in cheer for their unofficial member of the family. Look Wishy. Satsuki moved the bowl containing Wishiwashi closer to the TV screen. It's big bro Izu who gave you to me. He won. Isn't that great? Wishiwashi's usually sad face was smiling, swimming in circles around its bowl in cheer. That brat. Shigaraki growled. His scratching intensified, glaring hatefully at the victory of the brat who broke his hand, who was being loved by this accursed crowd. The voice of his master was still silent, with only a tiny, almost inaudible chuckle being heard. Nightai stared at the screen showcasing the boy victory with a silent, expressionless mask over his face, his eyes hidden by the white glare of the monitor. Suddenly, he scoffed, unimpressed, and totally not at all biased in his opinion. Nope, not at all. Cynthia rubbed her chin, a smirk on her face as he witnessed this Izuku Midoriya and his cooperation with his Combuskin, not to mention her skills and moves. Interesting, she said simply. Riolu was cheering for Izuku's victory. Lucario gave a brief nod of approval from his expressionless face. The raven-haired former student of Taisher simply remained silent, staring at the boy with glowing ocean blue eyes, inspecting his aura that seemed almost overflowing. The man smirked. Maybe the old man's onto something. High above the stadium, overlooking the whole event, a mysterious, transparent creature looked down to see Izuku and Combuskin standing victorious. The creature giggled with joy and fulfilled amusement, dancing and flying in circles around the sky at how fun the event was. The cheers of the crowd felt almost numb to Izuku. He stared blankly at the thousands of cheering fans and onlookers, their faces a blur to his eyes. In his search, they and their cheers, all directed for him, seemed inconceivable, impossible even. Finally, his eyes found the only person he wished to see. High up in the teacher's stands, All Might clapped with the rest of the teachers, a smile stretched wide and sunken eyes brimming with pride. Izuku's eyes watered with tears but stared back, smiling back with equal measure of gratitude, his right fist clenched and raised high into the air, to the roaring approval of the audience. They again all seemed numb to him, only focusing on All Might's approving nod. The words spoken between the two unsaid, but heard loud and clear. Finally, His thoughts were snapped away by the cheer of his Pokemon. "You did it, Izuku," Eevee said. "We knew you would. I always knew." Izuku's left hand wiped away the tears that threatened to spill. He looked up to see Combusken in front of him, smiling and paw raised up. Izuku smiled and nodded, wordlessly high-fiving his Pokemon. Yes, we did.